Ciao.
Welcome back sa The Game Silog Show, kwentuhan podcast about video games. Ako si Jhaz at ito ay Game Silog episode 67. Ngayon sobrang interesting ng topic natin ngayon tsaka yung guest natin kasi I'll be honest, wala akong alam dito kaya ang dami kong gustong malaman. So ngayon guest natin si Arturo Carunongan. So sir, welcome sa show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be part of your show.
Actually, ito yung first ko na episode na talagang ang daming nag-request sa'yo. Una-una si Mark, nung naging guest ko, yun siya sa spoiler cast ng Village. And then si Norvin. So, mga part siya ng community natin ng mga trophy hunters. And yun, talagang nire-request kanila para to discuss these games. Kasi sobrang interesting ng mga games na mga natatapos, mga napaplatinum, tas talagang literal na mga mahihirap talaga.
Tell Mark and Norvin and shoutouts to them and thank you so much for recommending me. And so, again, thanks so much for inviting me.
Shoutout sa inyo, sir. So, siguro gusto kong umpisahin yung discussion natin, no? Kasi lagi naman to pag may bagong guest sa show, gusto kong malaman yung video game history. So, Art, ano ba yung video game history mo?
Okay, actually, I was really more of a rhythm gamer back then. I still am now. I still consider rhythm games as my forte. But I actually began my gaming. I really went into gaming when I was in grade school, in elementary, because it was from the game Wolfenstein 3D. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that one. But I started modding Wolfenstein 3D and I actually got into programming that way. And that is actually how I also started my programming aspect through gaming. And recently, actually, I've been into console gaming more often, but I've actually really got into console gaming when this COVID-19 lockdown occurred, because what happened was I was more of a competitive gamer back then in rhythm games. Actually, my fortes are more on Dance Dance Revolution, but more specifically U-Beat. Okay, because I represented the Philippines in the B-Money Esports Championship for U-Beat.
Nice.
And eventually I became the 9th Konami Arcade Championship finalist for U-Beat. Yeah, the first Filipino to do so. So I actually spent some time training and trying to get better at my skills with regards to particular games. So I think that is mainly what my gaming is, or rather how I examine certain games, is sometimes when I played for enjoyment, but if there is something normally challenging about it, I like spending time trying to see how I can outsmart the game. Because normally at the end of the day, a game is a series of programs, a series of scripts, and you as a human, basically you just have to figure out a way on how you can eventually outsmart those scripts. But of course, I still love playing games for enjoyment, and I have been doing some research about it, particularly about rhythm games and step generation, because that is what my PhD dissertation is currently about. So yeah, kahit yung dissertation ko sa ComSci, it's still about games. So ayan. So gaming is a pretty big part of my academic life as well. So being able to integrate it along with my hobbies, it is something that is nice to have, especially during these times. It's a good way to at least spend lockdowns. Diba? Yeah.
Totoo.
And
sobrang fascinating yung mga sinasabi mo na actually hindi ko lahat talaga nagaget. So marami akong itatanong sa'yo. Nabanggit mo yung rhythm games, no? Ako, wala akong masyadong experience sa rhythm games. I think ang nalaro ko lang is na medyo na hook ako is kung familiar ka yung Auto Jam.
Auto Jam, yeah, definitely.
Ayun. So, yun lang. Pero, I guess, binibreak mo din yun? Or, kasi ganito, meron akong question sa'yo. Bago tayo mag-proceed doon sa mismong topic natin.
Mm-hmm.
Lately kasi, meron akong debate sa kaibigan ko tungkol sa esports. Kung familiar ka dun sa scene, lalo na kung, let's say, Mobile Legends, ang bibilis mag-retiro ng mga athlete. Kasi parang ang binibigay nila na argument is yung eye-hand coordination, pag tumatanda na, is nag-slow down compared sa mga bata. Kaya parang ang bilis nilang, kumbaga yung pagkuha nila ng mga player is talagang nag-start ng bata. Tapos yung tinatawag nilang prime years is nasa early 20s. Tapos pag nag-reach na sila ng 30s, automatic parang hindi na kagad sila, hindi na ganun kadali kunin yung mga atleta na to or yung mga esports na games or ano man tawag doon. So, ikaw bilang may background sa ganyan, sa tingin mo ba correlated din yung age doon sa skill na eye-hand coordination ng mga gamers na to?
Well, that's an interesting question. I never really thought about that because, to be honest with you, during the pre-COVID days, the Thailand representative for Dance Dance Revolution in the Bimani Esports Championship was over his 30s. Likewise, the Singaporean representative for Gitadora, I think, was over 30 years old. And there are some really, really good rhythm game players, DDR players, pump it up players, in the group players who are approaching their 30s. I think it has something to do with the nutrition nowadays and the supplements that they say that 30 is the new 20s. It's also observed actually in sports. You can see players in the NBA who are in their mid 30s yet still play like they are in their prime years. Good example would be LeBron James, who is apparently pushing 38, but he still plays like an extremely athletic individual. Although he's lost some athleticism, he's still very, very physically gifted. So with regards to that, with the eye-hand coordination, allow me to just explain how I got some eye-hand coordination. I am a classically trained pianist. So I have actually experienced practicing sometimes 6 hours of piano a day. And there were times during my younger years, when I actually practiced even more than that, especially when preparing for recitals. So I think with regards to the eye-hand coordination or with regards to trying to break a rhythm game, if you asked me a while ago if I tried to break a rhythm game, as much as possible, I try to score, let's say, the highest possible score. So in U-Beat, the highest score you can get is an excellent, which is scoring all perfect on all notes, usually on songs that are 2 minutes long. So I was the first Southeast Asian player, I think, who managed to get an EXC on all level 10s in U-Beat, and was the first from the Philippines to do so. We call those level 10 EXC masters. So yeah, there's that. With regards to my eye-hand coordination slowing down, I don't feel it yet. But with regards to what you said, they start young, I think that doesn't just apply to games. I think that applies to everything in general. So those who are in the professional field, normally those who play golf, okay, or those who play basketball, those who play tennis, they start at a young age. You can actually see it now in the Olympics. Those who are excelling, they started when they were very, very young. So I think it just doesn't apply in games in general, but it applies to everything. So those who start younger definitely have an advantage than those who start older. But I think that is not always the case. Because if you ask me, no matter how good you are at something, there could always be someone better than you who will show up eventually. So that is also something that I consider, not just in games, but in everything per se. You could be someone who started 10 years ago, and then there could be someone who started only 3 years ago but ends up being better than you. I think that's just how everything is. Parang minsan na lang there really are just some people who have a natural aptitude for things. It is up to how an individual decides to develop their natural aptitude for those things. That eventually leads them to either being better at what they are good at or just being good at what they are good at. Parang gano'n.
I agree. Yung mga previous episode ng podcast, lagi ko nasasabi na as a gamer, no, sa konteksto ng bilang gamer na merong, let's say, tinatawag natin yung casual gamer, merong average gamer, tas meron talaga yung mga legit na mga galing talaga na I think applicable rin naman siya sa ibang aspeto or ibang sports, no, na kahit sobrang araw-arawin mo yung pagpa-practice mo, hindi mo marireach yung level ng mga talented na to. Kunwari, siguro isang example na gagawin ko dito pag nirelate natin sa games, so kunwari Hollow Knight. Kahit anong gawin ko talaga, hindi ko matapos yung Pantheon. Kung familiar ka doon, kung ano. Meron kasi isang boss rush doon na na kailangan talunin mo yung series of bosses, tapos parang iba't ibang stages siya or something na ganun. Pero lagi ko naman sinasabi, bakit yung Sekiro na platinum ko naman, natapos ko naman. So, I think mga level din talaga, and kahit anong gawin mo talaga, kahit anong practice mo, kung hanggang doon lang yung ceiling mo sa skill, wala talaga, hindi mangyayari. Nag-agree ka ba doon, or sa tingin mo kahit hindi ka gifted, hindi ka talented, basta mag-practice ka na mag-practice, eventually ma-overcome yung mga ganitong mga challenges sa games?
Well, to be honest with you, first it has to start with yourself. You should know what your limitations are and what your capabilities are. Okay, in rhythm gaming, we normally call that phenomenon yung hindi ka na gumagaling or you're stuck at something. We call that a skill wall. Okay, to be honest with you, when I got into Ubeat, I encountered my skill walls at times when there were songs that I just couldn't get a perfect score on. And eventually, I managed to do that. And how did I do it? Practice, trying hard, and determination. Actually, not just in games. I think there really are just some things that we are not really suitable for. For example, no matter, this is outside of gaming. But no matter how hard I wanted to be a doctor, I couldn't be a doctor because I'm afraid of blood. Ayun.
Yes.
Likewise, I'm sure there are some people who can cook naturally, but that is something that I've always wanted to improve on and have yet to improve on, which is cooking. Pero with regards to games naman, I think it really depends on how much time you're willing to allocate, because again, there are certain games where it can punish you in the short run because it requires fast reaction. A good example of this one would be Super Meat Boy, if I'm not mistaken. It is a very punishing game, and many players tend to quit on it. But if you decide to persevere, it is actually a very doable and a very fair game, but it doesn't seem like it in the beginning. So with regards to yung issue mo sa Hollow Knight, I think you can do it, pero yun nga, the tediousness of failing over and over again, it sometimes can get into our heads and kind of discourage us. That is pretty normal in gaming, but it's also something I've encountered in my competitive rhythm gaming. But I have basically come to realize and experience that over and over again, and I think it has actually helped me with that one. So the more skill walls you encounter and the more times you're able to psych yourself up to break down that skill wall, eventually you'll just realize with enough hard work and with enough dedication, it can be done. Basically, my rule is if it doesn't require me to have a third arm, or if it doesn't require me to fly, it can be done in gaming at least. Or if it doesn't have multiplayer online trophies on a server that has died. The only impossible games I'd say would be those with glitch trophies or glitched achievements, or intentionally unbeatable, like let's say attacking Zegeta 2, but that's for another story.
May question ako sa dito regarding dun sa, kasi ngayon ko lang na-encounter yung term na binigay mo, yung skill wall. Hindi ko sure kung totoo to, pero narinig ko lang din to sa isang podcast, and I think merong documentary nito, hindi ko pa lang napapanood, na parang kunwari ganito rin kasi yung ginagawa ko. I'm not sure kung ganun ka din, no? Kunwari, stuck ka sa isang level, stuck ka sa isang boss. Hindi ako yung tipo ng gamer na pipilitin ko yung sarili ko na sige 100 tries, try hanggang matalo. Kasi ako, personally, na-frustrate ako nun. Ang ginagawa ko is, natutulog ako, and then paggising ko, luckily, after kong matulog, na-overcome ko yung boss na yun. Ang tanong ko sa'yo is, kasi yung documentary na, ang sinasabi niya, ang human makeup daw natin is nag-accumulate, or parang yung experience natin is na-absorb natin pag natulog na tayo, pag nagpahinga na tayo. I think same concept to sa leveling system ng Final Fantasy 15, na pag makukuha mo yung experience pag natulog ka. So sa ganito, sa mga game na mga ganito na mga mahihirap, do you think may idea ka ba na parang related ba yun sa makeup ng tao na talagang ma-absorb natin yung natutunan natin pag nagpahinga na tayo, or more on ano ka na parang sige hindi ako titigil hangga't hindi ko matapos tong stage na to or tong boss na to?
Ayun. I'll admit, there have been some songs kasi in my rhythm games, in order for me to get a perfect score on them, it would take me 200, 300, 400 attempts. Pero syempre, not in one sitting. Ako naman kasi, if you tend to do something and yung sinabi mo magpapahinga ikaw, matutulog ka, what's happening is your mind is getting refreshed and you get rest. You get rested. So therefore, when you approach that game, you have a clearer mind and that enables you to perform better under pressure. Now, ang nangyayari kasi minsan, kunyari, if you try it over and over again and then you have no success, what could be happening is, I've experienced this already. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist either, but I'm saying from personal experience that I've experienced that indeed. Kasi ang nangyayari, what happens is you tend to be gigil, masyadong gigil. And that enables you to make lots of mistakes, putting pressure on yourself. And what happens is it leaves you mentally exhausted. So if you're mentally exhausted, not just in games, but also in work, you can't function properly. So you need proper rest so that your mind can regroup and your senses are more heightened and more accurate. Kasi naman kung pagod ka, malamang hindi ka makaka-react ng mabilis, so mas madaling mamatay ikaw. It's easier as well to make stupid mistakes. Now, there are some who are able to play for 20 hours a day, working on an achievement, and still manage to get it. Actually, it's something I experienced, which I might share later on with regards to a game that I recently managed to plat. But again, I think there is more harm than benefits doing it that way. But again, as long as you take mental breaks and during your mental break, your persistence and determination doesn't wane, that is definitely going to help you out.
Yung isa kasi na narinig ko naman na argument na tungkol dun sa sinasabi na kailangan mo magpahinga, syempre yun yung mga benefits ng pag nagpahinga, ikaw ka well-rested ka, kumaga parang hindi ka gigil. Meron namang side ng, I think, mga gamers na ang argument na binibigay doon is nawawala yung momentum nila, kaya mas gusto nila na tuloy-tuloy yung paglalaro compared sa magpapahinga. Ako naman personally, kasi gaya ng nasabi mo, applicable din to sa ibang bagay or ibang activity. Kung pag nag-review ako, mas gusto ko yung matutulog muna ako pag gising ko, tsaka ako mag-review, tsaka ako mag-aaral, and then diretso pasok. Compared dun sa magpupuyat ka ng gabi, tapos tsaka ka matutulog, tapos tsaka ka papasok para mag-exam, mag-take ka ng exam. And I think siguro iba-iba rin kung paano mag-work yung mga style na yun.
Definitely.
Sa tao.
So,
sorry.
Sorry. Para sa akin naman, I think it's to each their own. That is one way. There are parang some individuals, they feed off of stress energy and they feed off of momentum that way. Pero for me, from my experience as well as being a pianist, okay, there's such thing as over-practicing as well. If you practice too much, you will tend to have, you'll injure yourself. You'll hurt your fingers. And baka sa gaming, you might get what is called gamer's thumb. Yung tipong you might have a thumb injury. And that is one of the dangers that we can get from too much gaming. So sitting as well for a long period of time is not really good for your health. So there's that. Pero with regards to the momentum thing, there are some gamers who are able to channel that momentum. I admit I'm actually one of them because I am able to play the same song over and over again in my rhythm gaming. There was one song that I played from okay. There was one song that I played continuously for 6 hours until I got the perfect score, and eventually
Walang pahinga yun? Yung 6 hours diretso yun?
May water breaks naman. And I had snack breaks naman. And I sat down din syempre. Pero yun, I can say I have experienced both sides, and I have experienced success in both sides in terms of gaming. But if you ask me which one would I prefer, I would actually prefer resting first and approaching a segment with a clearer mind. Because one of my issues as well in terms of rhythm gaming, when you tend to let's say, feed the momentum. The reason why you are not doing so well is it could be because you're doing something wrong and you're doing it continuously wrong. Okay. That is normally the case unless the game you're working on is a dungeon crawler or procedurally generated levels. Pero for me, I normally have a higher success if I approach something with a fresh mind. Although I have experienced success as well in terms of gaming with feeding off momentum and playing continuously, because you're dealing with two sides of the book. One is approach with a fresh mindset and with all your senses healthy, and the other is try and try until you get it, fail 100 times, succeed on the 101st time. So that's also something in my mind. Like, I have failed 1,000 times. I will say, instead of giving up, I'll say maybe I will succeed on the 1,001st time. Maybe I'll succeed on the 1,002nd time. And it's actually true. It is actually something that I've experienced a lot, when I would say I would give up and then maybe I'll give it another shot tomorrow. And then turns out I did succeed the next day. And then another situation where it's like one more attempt before going to bed, and it turns out it's in that one attempt where you succeed. So in reality, it is really just finding the balance where you don't exhaust yourself, but at the same time, you embrace the proper mindset given the situation that you're in. So kunyari, if there is something not going right, you may want to step away, take a break, and analyze what is it that is not going right, that is not causing you to succeed. Although, keep in mind that you will succeed in the future. Parang ganito siya. This is my mindset when I play a song, okay, or when I try to perfect a song. Parang I say, my chances of getting the perfect score on the next attempt, I am not sure. My chances of getting it, getting the perfect score the next day, I am not sure. But the chances of me getting a perfect score in it in the future is 100%. So it's a matter of when. So parang ganun yun. So para sa'yo, you can think, yung Hollow Knight, yung Pantheons, you're not certain when you are going to clear it. So hindi mo alam kung bukas makiklear mo siya, next week makiklear mo siya, next month. But you're certain, you can assure yourself that in the future, 100% chance you will clear it. So ganun siya.
Gets.
Oo,
kasi
ganon.
yung pag nare-relate ko siya dun, nabanggit mo rin no, yung kanina. I can remember yun dun sa Sekiro, yung final boss dun si Ishin yata.
Oo, si Ishin.
Talagang nagigil talaga. Hindi nawawala kasi parang nandun yung parang yung idea sa utak mo na kaya ko nang patayin to sa next round. Kasi nakuha ko, kumbaga pa nabawasan ko na yung life niya ng ganito. Konti na lang, napapatay ko na to. And pag sinubukan ko ulit next try, nako-confess ako na bakit parang hindi ako mas nagpe-perform ng mas maayos. Kumaga parang bakit nababawasan yung reflexes ko. Bakit nung etong round na to, etong fight na to, nabawasan ko yung buhay niya, ganito ko na yung mamamatay na. Pero nung next round biglang hindi ko napatay, hindi ko pa rin napatay. So parang ako personally, siguro nga, yun, nag-work sa akin. Kasi if natulog ako, pinahinga ko, kinabukasan, siguro maximum na yung 3. Napatay ko kagad. So,
wow, congrats.
So, parang, yun lang yung nakikita ko doon. Though, yun nga, nabanggit ko kanina yung doon sa Hollow Knight. Talagang, kahit anong gawin ko, yung napag-usapan natin na dire-diretso, tsaka yung tulog style or technique, talaga nag-work. Pero, siguro, i-approach ko yung game na, katulad sinasabi mo na, okay, matatalo ko to in the future. Hindi ko pa nga lang alam kung kailan. Hindi ko alam kung ngayong araw na to nandito ko or kinabukasan. Pero eventually, matatalo ko to. Siguro ganun yung tamang mindset doon.
Definitely.
Mas madali ko lang talaga siyang sigurong sinukuan compared doon sa ibang games.
It's normal. Pero yun nga, if you really want to dedicate something to it, don't just keep trying it blind or mindlessly. If you ask me, try to figure out what is something that's not working for you, or is there something that is causing you to fail? For example, in my rhythm gaming, is there a section where I normally mess up in? Because if there's a section I normally mess up in, so kunyari, doon ako palagi nagkaka-great or nagkakamali, it could be one, mali yung timing ko, or bumibilis ako in that section, or bumabagal ako in that section. So I try to analyze, where am I going wrong? And how can I improve on that one? Maybe if I use my middle finger and then my thumb, that is going to allow me to execute the next section better. Then in contrast, if I use my index finger and my thumb, so parang ganyan siya. So in Hollow Knight, so what is it that is causing you to fail? Is it because, let's say, um, I haven't really played Hollow Knight yet kasi, pero
Mm.
a similar game to that one would be Super Meat Boy.
Mm.
Ako naman kasi, whenever I'd fail a stage over and over again, or when I do the no death runs, kasi yung Super Meat Boy, there's a trophy there where you have to clear all the levels without dying in a row. So I tried to analyze what is the particular level where I always die in, and what section do I always die in. So how can I negate it? Okay, so basically, yung mindset ko, ina-analyze ako, bakit ako namamatay sa level na yon? Is it because... So I try to put aside the fact na kinakabahan ako, but I try to say, is it because baka masyado akong mabilis? Maybe it's better if I pause for a while, if I release the run button, and then I try to experiment. So parang that is something that I also consider. So if I'm not able to succeed at something, I try to step back, so mentally relax myself, and analyze, where am I going wrong? How can I improve my performance in that particular section? So parang ganon siya.
Yung Super Meat Boy ba, wala siyang save state?
Hirap kasi balik sa umpisa pag wala, unfortunately. Sa if you're doing the no death runs, pero the game has a save definitely.
Okay, gets. Isang issue ko rin doon as a gamer, no, I'm not sure kung ganun ka din. Pasmado ako. So pag yung kunwari naalala ko, isang example is yung sa Sekiro nga, pag yung syempre sobrang intense na nung fight, tas feeling mo matatalo mo na. Grabe, sobrang pawis na pawis sa yung kamay ko.
Ito mga puti-puti.
Don't worry.
Isa rin I think isa rin yun na nakaka-apekto dun sa performance ko pag yung nandun ako sa ganung stage ng game or ng boss fight. Talagang grabe. Tapos parang dumudulas na yung button sa fingers ko. So, isang factor din yun, I think.
That happens rin to me, especially when I'm trying to get a perfect score na song, tapos palapit na sa ending. Tapos mahirap yung song, medyo kinakabahan na ako. That has happened so many times. I messed up at the very, very end, kung saan ang dali-dali pa. So,
mali, sayang.
That's normal. That's a normal feel. That's normal.
So, Art, gusto ko mag-transition tayo dito sa isang nakalagay ka sa show notes natin. Kasi curious ako, pero nahapiyawan mo na rin naman. Gusto ko malaman, kasi nabanggit mo kanina, diba, parang competitive gamer ka, no?
Mm-hmm.
And madalas na rin naman to nagiging topic sa show, and gumawa na rin ako ng video essay tungkol dito kung bakit ako personally, bakit ako trophy hunter, bakit gusto ko yung trophy, no? Ikaw, ano ba yung sayo personally? Bakit ka trophy hunter? PlayStation, to be specific.
Well, actually, I started trophy hunting lang last year, mainly because of the COVID-19 lockdown. But it's more of because I wanted to spend time with my console that I've neglected for so long. Kasi yun nga, I'm always out in the arcade, practicing my rhythm games. So that's basically what got me back to my console. But then what got me into trophy hunting per se, it's because when I play games normally, the trophies allow me to maximize the time spent with the game itself. And normally the trophies give descriptions on what are things that the game has in store for the player. And whenever I play something, normally I just love trying to experience everything that the game has to offer. So all the challenges that exist, the story, the lore. But with regards to trophies as well, some of them have challenges that are very difficult. And what is nice about those things is sometimes the attitude or the mindset that you have to embrace in order for you to actually accomplish those challenges. They actually carry on over in the real world. So being persistent, it actually helps out in the real world. And let's say being able to keep a positive mindset to the point that it doesn't become toxic positivity, but it is something that is allowing you to push through. Because as we know, this COVID-19 pandemic, no matter how we want to turn it, it's actually a very difficult time. But games basically, they show us that if you work hard on something and you really want it, eventually you'll be able to get it. Because there have been some really punishing games that we are familiar with. So we've got the Dark Souls franchise. We've got those very difficult platformers like Super Meat Boy. And then, as you mentioned, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, part of the Soulsborne, which are notorious for difficulty, but they have those trophies, which is a milestone or a symbol of the hard work and the dedication that you put into mastering the mechanics, which is something that, let's say, a normal person wouldn't put.
Mm.
Okay, so the sensation of being rewarded for something that you put an effort into, that's basically what trophies give you. Although you could say that some have argued, but trophies have no bearing in, the real world, diba?
Okay.
Pero but the point is you showed some effort to accomplish something, so that means that you can carry that mindset over in the real world.
Mm.
Okay, and let's say in your work, if you want something really badly, as long as you show some dedication to it, you will improve not only in work but as an individual itself, as an individual yourself as well.
Ang ganda nun. Gusto ko
Oh
lang
yeah.
gusto ko ring i-share art no kasi gusto ko ring gamitin tong platform to talk about parang sa mental health no.
Mm-mm.
Nabanggit ko na rin to sa last episode I think. And sa ginawa ko rin na video essay pero sa mga bagong nakikinig ngayon gusto ko rin banggitin kung bakit naman ako trophy hunter no.
Mhm.
Madalas akong inaatake ng anxiety lately, hindi ko alam kung bakit. I'm not gonna say na parang meron akong depression kasi irresponsible yun na self-diagnose mo yung sarili mo na depressed ka no. Pero I'm sure 100% na nakakaramdam mo ng anxiety. And itong paghahunt ng trophy, for me ano to yung mga small victories, yung mga simpleng yun nga, kunwari bronze trophy tapos silver mga ganyan, I consider it as parang victory. Parang isa sa mga activities na okay sa akin. Kunwari yung pagdilinis ng bahay, mga ganyan, paghuhugas ng pinggan, paglalaba na meron ka na-accomplish kahit sobrang menial lang, sobrang liit lang. So, ganun yung nabibigay sa akin naman ng trophy. Mas lalo na pag nakuha ko yung platinum. So, grabing sarap ng pakiramdam naman yun. So, yun, gusto ko lang i-share yun na kung bakit ako nag-hunt ng trophy.
Oh, definitely. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, any sense of accomplishment, no matter how small it is still an accomplishment. So don't downplay
Totoo.
it. No. And then with regards to that, that is a coping mechanism. Obviously, when we talk about mental health, kasi there tends to be something taboo about it.
Mm.
But thankfully, society has been more open with discussing mental health. I actually do some research about that one, and I've had my experience with mental health issues with both personally and I've been dealing with in work. I've been dealing with students who have been classified as individuals with special needs, and I've actually
Okay.
dealt with individuals, and um, so that is actually something that is nice to have, especially if you have an anxiety disorder, having a coping mechanism. Okay, so I actually encourage that one. And the nice thing is, there are so many games out there that promote awareness with regards to mental health, because mental health is something that is actually as important as our physical health, because mental
Mm.
health, um, it can carry on over to your physical well-being, because if you have panic attacks, if you have anxiety disorder, you
Yes.
can feel things like shortness of breath, dizziness, you can feel like you're having a heart attack, and you can feel like you're dying. So um, those are things that we really have to address. And the nice thing is video games have been very open with regards to addressing mental health. As a matter of fact, I'd like to suggest a game about mental
Sige.
health. Have you played Celeste before?
Hindi pa. Pero yun, naririnig ko nga yan.
Yes, you should play that. It is a very, very nice game that tackles mental health. Another one would be Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice.
Mm.
That is an excellent way of portraying an individual trying to battle their inner demons. So there's that. And I've had my fair share of working on related literature regarding schizophrenia, psychosis. Because personally, as an individual, I've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder
Mm.
because it runs in the family. So there's actually nothing wrong, if you ask me, if you use video games as a way
Yes.
of coping, and being able to use them as a way of coping and having a way to, let's say, make the experience more fulfilling. That is actually something very nice, and I actively encourage individuals who think of video games as an escape, okay, or as a way to help their mental health, mental well-being improve. There's nothing wrong
Totoo.
with that.
Kasi meron akong, I think nung simula nung naging open ako sa pag-share nung nakaramdam ako ng anxiety and then playing video games helped me, no? Lalo na yung trophy. May nag-PM sa akin na listener na kaibigan din na siya. Syempre, hindi ko nababanggitin kung sino siya. Na parang, sabi niya, boy, nakakaramdam ako ng ganito. Ito ba yung anxiety? Kasi, hindi ko, syempre, hindi naman ako ganun ka-knowledgeable tungkol dito. Kumbaga, in-explain ko lang or sinabi ko lang sa kanya kung ako personally, kung ano yung nararamdaman ko. Kung parang nabanggit mo kanina yung shortness ng paghinga or parang ataking ka sa puso, dizziness. Yan, yung mga nararamdaman ko. At ang weird kasi, okay naman ako. Kung wala akong literal na problema na nangyayari nung time na yon. Pero bigla na lang, for some reason, bigla akong kinakabahan na parang takot ako. Parang natatakot ako kung ano parang may masamang mangyayari. Parang ganun. Ganun yung experience ko. Tapos, shinare ko yun dun sa kaibigan or dun sa listener na nag-message sa akin. Sabi ko sa kanya, boy, hindi ko alam kung paano.
That was a panic attack. That was a panic attack. I've experienced that one. I think my worst panic attack was when I was in the mall practicing my rhythm game. Tapos, ang nangyari, basically, I skipped lunch. That was a bad, when I was much, much younger, I thought because I was invincible physically. So I skipped lunch, mga konti lang. Tapos while I was practicing yung Dance Revolution, medyo puneros ako sarili ko. And then I started to feel like fainting. Kasi it was a normal hypoglycemia effect. Bumagsak yung blood sugar ko.
Same din ba yan yung kasi sa experience ko naman, yun nga, yung mga nabanggit ko kanina. And meron din yung parang all day gusto ko lang matulog. Kumbaga parang wala akong drive or motivation for that certain day para gumawa ng activities. And yun nga, nung nagtanong yung kaibigan ko, sabi ko, kailangan mong hanapin, kasi nga, hindi ko alam kung ano yung mag-work sa kanya, kasi ito lang yung nag-work sa akin. Sabi ko dun sa kaibigan ko or sa listener na nag-message sa akin is, kailangan mong hanapin kung ano yung bagay na nagpapasaya sa'yo. So, ang sa akin kasi video games yun eh. And
definitely.
Yun yung nakakatulong sa akin. And hindi ko pwedeng sabihin na video games din yung makakatulong sa'yo. So, syempre, yun yung una kong, kumbaga parang yun yung first aid na binigay ko sa kanya. And then sabi ko, kung hindi talaga kaya, seek professional help. Kasi yun talaga eh. Pero nabanggit ko sa kanya na, try mo rin boy, sabi ko doon sa kaibigan ko, try mo din boy, kunwari lumabas ka, kumbaga get fresh air sa labas, kumbaga parang maglakad-lakad ka, window shopping, ganyan. So, hindi ko rin alam, pero nung nakikinig ka man ngayon, hindi ko alam kung nakapagbigay ako sa kanya ng tamang advice, no? Kasi nga. Pero eventually kailangan mo lang para sa akin kung ganun, hanapin mo kung ano yung mag-work sa'yo, ano yung nagpapasaya sa'yo, and then stick to it, and kung di talaga kaya yun, seek professional help.
It's nice, Rin, because I think there really are some individuals who need help, but the thing is, those individuals sometimes they just don't want to seek help. Okay, so in order to really get better, you first have to accept that you have a quirk. I wouldn't call it something negative, but it's basically part of who you are. Okay, and once you're able to accept it, normally that is when an individual is able to start, seeking help.
Yung sa'yo ba, alam mo kung ano yung nagtitrigger nun?
Yes, definitely. Okay, so what happened to me was when I got the hypoglycemia effect, basically, ang nangyari, ayun, I almost fainted. Tapos natakot ako sobra. I could not play my rhythm games for a while. Kasi takot ako na baka mangyari ulit. Pero my main trigger is normally when I am under a lot of stress, all of a sudden, because I recall the worst panic attack I've had is normally if I have so many things to deal with at the same time, and parang I don't know if I'm going to be able to accomplish all of it. So yeah, and I tend to have an idea when it's going to be starting. So when I can feel suddenly not being able to breathe, suddenly the cold sweats, the feeling nervous, the stars, nakikita ko na, parang ganun, I'm like saying, okay, yes, this is a panic attack. But the first time it happened, I remember, natakot ako. I could not go out properly because I am so worried na baka mangyari, kunyari, baka paano kung mangyari habang nagda-drive ako? What if it happens while I'm teaching? What if it happens while I am at work? Alam mo yun? Yung parang I
Totoo.
ended up thinking too much about it na naging non-functional ako.
Mm.
And then it was even more frustrating because I would visit like a cardiologist, neurologist, and they would all
Mm.
say, "There's nothing wrong naman with you."
Yun
And
yung
then it was,
mahirap eh.
and then it was only then when I decided that, or when I accepted that I am like this, and
Gaano mo katagal na identify yung mga triggers mo na yun? Kasi mamaya i-share ko din na-identify ko na lately kung ano yung trigger ko eh. Siguro i-share ko muna yung sa akin.
sige.
I think hindi ko naman masasabi na control freak ako. Pero natitrigger yung anxiety ko kapag meron akong mga schedule or meron akong mga dapat gawin tapos hindi natutupad. Kunwari, kailangan makapaglaba ako ng Thursday. Pag hindi ako nakapaglaba ng Thursday, for some reason, Friday, parang inaatake ako ng anxiety. Kumbaga, pag hindi ko nagawa yung sinet ko na activity for a certain day or schedule, doon ako doon yun yung nakaka-trigger sa akin. So, ikaw ba, paano mo na-identify yung sa'yo at gaano katagal? Mahirap ba yung proseso?
Well, to be honest with you, the hardest thing really was accepting it. Unfortunately, there are really some individuals who, there are some individuals who just can't really understand the concept of mental health. Kaya, yun ang major factor. First, you have to be able to communicate with it. Ako naman, I eventually communicated it with my relatives. And it turns out, naswerte ako, my relatives have it as well, and it's in my genes. So it was much, much easier to talk about it kasi you are able to talk about it with some individuals who also have it. And eventually, I, sought professional help about it on how I can manage my anxieties. So yung mga breathing exercises when I get panic attacks, and how to distinguish basically a panic attack from a cardiac emergency as much as possible. So parang mga ganon. Those are the things.
Ang mahirap kasi I think ang isa sa mahirap gaya ng nasabi mo na, isang mahirap kasi sa atin, no, sa society natin or sa Pinas. Parang laging dinidismiss lang na maarte ka lang eh. Yung nag-iinarte ka lang eh. Kaya ngayon nakakatawa rin na, or ako din mismo, na meron akong malit na platform katulad nito na openly talks about mental health. And sana mag-project sa ibang tao na to openly talk about mental health din.
Kasi, definitely.
Diba?
Because the first step into helping someone who needs help is communication and knowing that despite their mental health, they can be accepted for who they are, and that can open the path for them to seeking the professional help that they need. And in the midst of seeking professional help, assure them that they are not the only one with that condition, and the fact that is the condition that they have, or the mental health condition they have, is actually affecting more people than they imagine. At first, I thought I was the only individual who was like this, so that kind of made me feel bad. But when I found out that this condition affects more people than I thought, it made things a lot easier. So knowing that there is someone who understands and is willing to talk to you about it, that is normally the first step. And unfortunately, getting people to open up, as you said, in this country nga, medyo taboo pa siya. Actually, not just in this country per se, but really, all around the world, there are still some individuals talaga who cannot understand it fully. So really, the best way is to at least try to get the word out as much as possible to eliminate the stigma that it is something not normal, because it is actually something that is more prevalent nowadays, especially in the fast-paced world. Parang we don't have time to really sit down and be non-productive for the sake of being non-productive, for the sake of mentally recharging ourselves. So parang ganon. It's also actually like that in gaming. If we're going to fit it in gaming, na if you're faced with a very difficult achievement, look at others. If there have been others who have achieved it, it means it's possible. So if you have parang yung anxiety issues na ganyan, if there are others that have it and they're still alive and breathing, then that means you can continue being alive and breathing despite having that.
Totoo. Good thing na we're openly talking about it, no. Pero sa kabilang banda naman, I don't think na mag-agree ka or gusto ko malaman din yung opinion mo. Ngayon na openly we're talking about it, and then yung let's say sa social media, etc. Meron din ng mga iilan. Ayokong i-conflate pag samasamahin kasi yung parang sa isang umbrella.
Mhm.
Meron din naman mga tao na ginagamit to as an excuse na parang free jail card something, ganung term na
Free from
okay,
jail card, oo.
na parang okay, may mental health ako, okay, you have to adjust or tanggapin mo ako na ganito. And I think yun yung isa sa mga dahilan rin kaya bakit ang hirap pag-usapan nito kasi hindi mo naman pwede kagad na parang i-doubt yung tao pag sinabi niya na may nararamdaman siyang ganun. Pero at the same time, meron din mga tao na ginagamit yon na excuse. So, sa tingin mo, ano yung magandang approach doon?
Well, there's a gray line for that. I think an individual who reaches that level normally had to go through years. So that is not something that just happens overnight, if you ask me. So with regards to that one, I don't agree that someone should receive a get out of jail card properly or receive a pass because of their mental health issue. So yun. Pero what I'm saying is parang sometimes those issues could be avoided if only that individual seek help earlier. Or let's say help was provided to that individual earlier. So kaya nga, in order for us to, let's say, tackle that issue, we have to enlighten, okay, and talk about it more often, or proper education. So we can reach out to individuals in need, okay, get them to open up before they at least reach that particular level. Because sometimes when they reach a particular level, medyo mahirap na, and those individuals are the one, as you said, are the one who are painting a more negative emphasis on this whole picture. But in reality, there are several individuals who are not yet in that level. And before they have a chance to reach that level, you give them the proper bridge to start their road to recovery to not reach that level. Parang
Gets. Meron akong last na question tungkol dito sa mental health topic
Sure.
natin, no? Actually, hindi ko in-expect na ganito yung magiging lang discussion natin, pero mabilis na last na siguro, tapos magpipivot ako sa ibang topic naman.
Sure.
Napapansin ko to lately, no? Correct me if I'm wrong, na parang may mga generation ngayon ng kabataan na pagdating sa mental health, parang merong paano ba, may air sa kanila na this is cool pag may mental health issue ka. Meron ka bang ganun na nadedetect, lalo na sa mga nag-handle ka ng mga estudyante, diba? Meron ka bang ganun na nakikita or nadedetect sa kanila?
Well, it's not that medyo cool, but it's just that they place it in a misplaced light. Yung parang, this is kind of normal for some people who just say that they're feeling so depressed today, or they have depression all of a sudden, or they say things like, my girlfriend or my boyfriend is so bipolar, he is so cute. I think it is just a misplaced way of sensationalizing that. So again, ayun nga, proper education and being more open to communication about this one, it is one way to resolve that. Now, as for me naman, thankfully, I haven't really encountered much who are like that. Though a few ones that I do naman normally, they don't do so in such a big deal na nakaka-trigger. Actually, hindi naman talaga nakaka-trigger in big volumes. Normally kasi they speak it on in a humorous way and in a non-derogatory way. Pero yun nga, unfortunately, minsan nasa-sensationalize in the improper way.
Na parang ako sa observation ko, na parang, okay, may mental health issue ako, interesting ako na tao, or parang artist ako. Parang ganun yung air na kadalasan na nakikita ko sa kanila. Though, hindi ko naman masabi na, kumbaga wala naman akong basis 100% na ganun talaga. Kasi syempre, ang hirap din naman na i-deny na, nag-iinarte ka lang. Or parang ako yung mismo yung nagiging problema dun sa problema na na kinakatakutan ko sa issue ng mental health, di ba?
Well, I think kasi there are more. You can read it in the news na parang, let's say, the celebrity opens up about their anxiety, ganon. I think yun nga kasi it's becoming more accepted, and that is empowering more individuals to be open about it. So that is something that is also probably something that we have to consider. Yun nga lang, as much as possible, if we can paint the proper picture about it, and the realities, and
Totoo.
back them up with numbers, that would be helpful to dispel any myths and misconceptions about it.
Meron pa akong isa, sorry Art, no.
Sure,
Sorry,
no
hindi
problem.
ko talaga mapalampas to. May pinapakinggan kasi ako ng podcast. So Good
Uh-huh.
Times with Mo. Si Mo Twister yung ano nun, yung host nun.
Mhm.
And meron siyang binigay na parang question or theory. I think wala naman siyang binigay na basis or stats na to, na
Mhm.
parang ngayon na mas open na tayo sa mental health issue, na parang mas lalo ring naging open yung tao to think, sorry, medyo baka may trigger, no? Ang hirap i-discuss na ito. Pero sige, sana maitawid natin na maayos.
Okay.
Ngayon na mas open tayo sa mental health issue, mas nagiging open sa ibang tao yung idea ng suicide. What do you think about that? Sa statement na yun?
Wow, that is very, very difficult. Actually, I am in no power to really talk about it, but before an individual normally reaches the point where they want suicide or they commit suicide, normally they just do it without saying. Because from what my psychiatrist told me, and from psychologists and other psychiatrists who I've communicated with, normally when a person jokes about suicide, that is already a sign. Okay, that is already a symptom. But individuals who really decide to commit suicide, normally they just do it. They don't look for someone to talk them out of it. They don't look for someone to try to tell them to stop. Okay, they just basically decide to do it. So that is a pretty difficult thing. What is even more dangerous normally is sometimes, this is actually a true story. There are some individuals who are contemplating suicide already, and then when they reach that point that they're given medications, that their anxiety goes away, they tend to have the feeling that they can do absolutely anything, and then all of a sudden that is when they decide to commit suicide because they run out of things. They basically run out of hindrances. So that is an extremely dangerous thing that unfortunately again happens quite frequently because there are many individuals who go through certain issues that are not addressed properly. But once you reach that particular level, again, that is not a result of something overnight. That is something that builds on top of several issues. Because to be honest with you, um, I've heard of suicide a lot, but the thought of suicide never really crossed my mind. So I think hearing about suicide a lot doesn't really open the idea to suicide that much, but it sort of opens the possibility that suicide can be an escape from the many problems that some individuals feel like they have no escape from. So that is where professional help comes in, because
Yes.
that because through professional help, that is where individuals are able to realize that the problems that they have a solution other than suicide. And it is through professional help where they can be convinced of that one. So
Totoo.
unfortunately, really, yung suicide kasi, that is thought of as the major or the main escape from their problems or from whatever is triggering their condition. It could also be a result of things like psychosis, schizophrenia, yung you're losing your touch with reality na. So parang ganun siya. So if we're going to say, if you want my opinion about that, I beg to disagree with that one. Knowing more about suicide will not actually promote suicide per se, but it will actually promote the idea that it is a possible escape from the problems that you view as inescapable from. So therefore, it is more openly considered instead of actually seeking the proper professional help that they should get.
Gets.
Mm-mm.
Whew! Ang
That was
heavy
very
naman
difficult.
ang
Oo.
heavy. Bakit ganito yung naging takbo ng usapan
Oo
natin?
nga
Anyway,
eh.
sorry.
Okay lang.
Magpipivot tayo dito sa
Okay.
dito sa topic natin.
Hindi, kasi mental health is also in games, di ba? Kaya nga,
Totoo.
for those who want to enlighten themselves with mental health, I actually recommended this to my thesis advisees kasi they're planning on making a game about stress management. Sige,
Mm.
so we're in the topic of mental health. I want to recommend, as I mentioned, Celeste.
Yes.
Okay, Celeste, it's spelled Celeste. Then there's Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. And also Among the Sleep would be a nice game. And finally, Gris.
Gris.
Gris is a very, very nice game that tackles about mental health. So,
Sige. Lalaruin ko
oh,
din yan. Matagal ko na rin gustong laruin actually yung Celeste tsaka yung Hellblade. Kasi nga marami ako narinig na magandang reviews dyan tungkol sa
very
game
good.
na yan.
Oo.
So, siguro magpipivot ako dito sa question na to, Art, no?
Aha.
Ano yung favorite mo na Platinum Trophy at ano yung pinakamahirap?
Wow.
Ang layo ng connection. Anyway, yun nga. Ano yung favorite mo na Platinum Trophy tsaka ano yung pinakamahirap?
I'd say my favorite Platinum Trophy, if you ask me, my favorite would definitely be, it's a tie actually between Celeste or Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. Okay. I loved Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time because I really, really, really loved Crash Bandicoot. But the thing is, Crash Bandicoot 4 was, it was more difficult than I thought it would be. I was a Crash Bandicoot veteran already, so I had an idea that Crash Bandicoot can be rage-inducing because I remember as a kid before, minsan nga napapaiyak ako sa inis eh. True story.
May question ako dyan sa Crash. Saglit lang, Art. Sorry to cut you off.
Yes, okay.
Parang, meron ako nakausap na mas pinahirap daw yung Crash nga compared doon sa Crash before na original. Totoo ba yun o hindi?
Yeah, I think. Well, kasi, first of all, I think yung target players kasi nila have aged. So therefore, their skills have aged, they've gotten better, so malamang they had to level up the challenge. Maybe kasi yung mga naglaro ng Crash Bandicoot before, I recall I was around 10 years old back, or 11 years old when I played Crash 1, then Crash 2, Crash 3, and then now I am much, much older, so when the Insane Trilogy released, I was able to breeze through it, but I remembered it giving me a hard time when I was a kid. Although the time trials of Crash Bandicoot 1 did make me struggle a bit, but I pervaded. But Crash Bandicoot 4, wow, oh my gosh.
Sobrang hirap?
Basta I felt like I was a kid again, so yung inis na nararamdaman ko, yung hirap na nararamdaman ko bilang bata playing Crash Bandicoot, I felt it. Oo, so parang natuwa ako eh. Kasi parang, I thought it would be a game I would breeze through again, but then I realized, oh my gosh, mukhang this is a difficult game. It requires practice. And yung feeling na having to practice, may isang level doon na pre-practice ko for 8 hours kasi there are time trials. When we say time trials, they are levels where you have to beat under a certain time to get a relic. So there are 3 types of relics: the Sapphire Relic, the Gold Relic, the Platinum Relic, and the other relic not required for the trophy is the Developer Time Relic. The Platinum Time is basically a very low time, so you have to finish the level as quickly as possible. But here's the thing: if you die, you start all over from the beginning.
Wow.
Yes, if you die, you start all over from the beginning. And some of the levels there are notoriously long. So the levels are longer than the previous Crash Bandicoot, and likewise the enemies are they're not more intelligent, but they have a more complicated pattern than the original one. So mistakes are very easy to make, and the fact is that the times, they tend to be pretty tight, so you have almost little to no room for errors. But the insane ones, I'd say, would be the insanely perfect relics. Because for the insanely perfect relics, okay, in the original Crash Bandicoot, you simply have to get all boxes and reach the end of the level.
Okay.
Now, in Crash Bandicoot 1, the OG Crash Bandicoot 1, you have to get all the boxes without dying and finish the level without getting to get a clear gem.
Okay.
So, in Crash Bandicoot 4, the insanely perfect relics require you to get all boxes, some of which are in very difficult and unmissable areas. Don't die. And basically, you have to get all the boxes in all bonus areas of that level. So the gem levels, the bonus section, which is very difficult. And if you die, you have to basically reset the level.
Good Lord.
Yes, and you have to do that
Grabe.
for all levels. And there's one particular level that was notorious, I think two, which is the
Okay.
polar levels. You're basically riding Polar, who is Crash Bandicoot's pet polar bear. And the collision detection was extremely wonky. There was a learning curve with the collection level, with the collision, my mistake. And the worst part is that part happens at the very end of the level. And that section is pretty lengthy, so there are a lot of opportunities for you to miss boxes. And before that, there is a complicated side section which requires precise platforming. And
May question ako sa'yo, Art, no? Yung nabanggit mo kanina yung collision detection ba yun? Or yan? O sa difficulty na rin in general. Paano mo, as a player, no, and as a competitive player, paano mo masasabi na yung pagkapatay mo or yung mga errors mo, player error talaga or may mali sa pagka-design ng game?
Well, I'd say most of them would be player errors. Pero yung mali sa game, normally, let's say, mawawala ang... Let's say, biglang maglalag yung game in a rhythm game, tapos mawawala sa rhythm.
Pero dito sa Crash Force experience mo, di mo ba naisip na kung yung nabanggit mo na collision detection is wonky? Hindi yun parang player error or intended to be that way?
I think it was eventually patched in the PS5 version to be more forgiving. But back then, in the OG PS4, the one that I got a platinum in, it was very unforgiving. Where sometimes if you try to hit, let's say you have 4 boxes in front of you, your main goal is to basically hit the center, okay, and then to get all 4 of them. It was a pretty common occurrence to hit all 4 of them, yet yung other 2 hindi matatamaan. So it was extremely strict. It was extremely strict. So it wasn't really that. I say it wasn't wonky, but it's more like it was extremely tight that you had to be really specific. Na sometimes you just had no room for any slight diversion from the movement patterns in order for you to get a consistent run. Although it's possible to get a consistent run, it was extremely difficult. And again, there were some there were some areas, I think, where it looked like you landed on the platform. This is extremely common, especially in Crash Bandicoot 1 in the high road, a notoriously hard level in the remake, where it looked like you landed on the platform, but then Crash would suddenly slip and fall off. So I think it has something to do with the built-in physics of the game engines that they use to develop the game. So I think it's also not the fault of the developers, but then sometimes as a player, you have to find a way if you can work around the limitations that have been set before you by the game developers, or fingers crossed, wait for them to patch it.
Nabanggit mo yung yung parang pagland sa platform, no? I think isang best example dito sa experience ko is yung Dead Cell. Kung makikita nyo or kung may slow down nyo yung game, no? Pag tumalon ka, kahit hindi ka magland mismo doon sa platform, makikita mo yung character mo na parang nakalutang parang sa bangin or sa mahulugan, pero hindi ka mahuhulog. Kumbaga parang may invisible platform doon, pero hindi talaga yun yung platform. Nagbe-make sense ba ako?
Yes,
o
definitely.
Parang ganun. So yung mga ganung klaseng design, I think parang forgiving para sa mga players kasi kumbaga parang merong invisible na platform dito na mahaba talaga yung lalandingan mo. Hindi mo kailangan lumanding mismo doon sa platform na nakikita na visible. So sa mga ganung games na nabanggit mo, yan talaga, kailangan sakto talaga. Saktong-sakto.
Yeah, at least in the unpatched version. Pero I haven't tried out the patched version of Crash Bandicoot 4s in PS5. But I think despite the patches, it shouldn't really make it too much easier, because despite the patch in Polar, there is still a lot of very difficult segments in Crash 4, especially yung Cortex Castle, yung very last level. Tapos you've got the flashback tapes. So yun. But
So
the
ay sorry, sige.
okay
Sorry,
lang.
sorry. Go. Go
But
ahead.
the feeling of having the platinum trophy pop up eventually after the rage quit, the almost rage quits, it's such a good feeling. So yeah, so
Gets,
Crash
gets.
4 is my favorite platinum trophy so far.
So, tapos tayo sa favorite, no? Ano naman
Mhm.
yung hardest para sa'yo?
No question. Crypt
Yan.
of the Necrodancer.
Kwento mo nga yan, Art. Kasi I think, ako hindi talaga ako familiar dyan. And I think yung majority ng gamers yung talagang naglalaro lang ng mga blockbuster games, yung mga,
Mhm.
mga exclusive. Kasi, brinouse ko din yung mga games mo. And naglalaro ka rin naman yung kulari, yung mga Final Fantasy,
Mhm.
Kingdom Hearts. Pero, yung ibang games dun sa list mo, I can say na, hindi ko sure kung ano yung tamang term, correct me if I'm wrong, obscure or
Yeah, or
hindi
or
niche. Oh,
obscure
yan.
or niche.
Ayan.
Uh,
So, kwento mo tong ano, yung experience mo dito sa Crypt of the Necrodancer.
okay. Now, Crypt of the Necrodancer is a roguelike rhythm game.
Okay.
Basically, you move and traverse a dungeon, fighting monsters to the rhythm of music that is playing. So that means all your movements they have to be done in rhythm and you have to do them very quickly. The thing is, Crypt of the Necrodancer is procedurally generated, so the levels are randomly generated.
Mm.
There are over a billion seeds, so that means there are over 1 billion possible level layouts.
Grabe.
Okay, yes. So there are you can't just memorize each level. You have to familiarize yourself with how the levels work, or rather, how enemies move, how each item can affect the environment that you're currently in, and basically how you can interact with other objects given what certain items you have, or how let's say your equipment can cause a particular interaction with another set of items. So there is many things to learn about Crypt of the Necrodancer aside from obviously being able to keep up the beat.
Mm.
The thing is, it is notoriously known in the trophy hunting community. Most of the time, if you try to ask for someone what is the hardest platinum trophy in existence, they will say
Mm.
Crypt of the Necrodancer almost 9 out of 10 times. So I gave it a shot, and I have to agree, it is very, 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 very difficult. The only other game I think that gave me a harder time would be practicing competitively in rhythm games for
Mm.
Ubeat when I was preparing for the Bimani Esports Championship, when I was trying to EXE some level 10s, the level 10.9s, level 10.8s. I'd say that's probably the only thing harder in my mind, but definitely there are mga level 18s and level 19s in DDR where if you try to get a perfect score, a perfect full combo, that's going to be harder. But with regards to getting the platinum trophy in Crypt of the Necrodancer, that is by far the hardest thing I've ever done in console gaming. Okay.
Gaano katagal 'yon? Tsaka ano yung naging preparation mo para dun sa platinum run mo nung game?
Okay. I'd say getting the platinum trophy in Crypt of the Necrodancer took me around 1,000 hours. Around
Grabe.
600, yeah, around 600,
Wow.
around 600 plus hours um, practicing on the PS4, and then around additional 400-ish hours practicing on PC. And more so really just reading up and strategizing, watching videos. But to be honest with you, allow me to explain what the trophies of Crypt of the Necrodancer are and why it's
Sige.
notoriously difficult. Okay. Um, so Crypt of the Necrodancer is basically composed of around 4 zones, 5 zones if you count the DLC, but you actually don't need the DLC to get the Platinum Trophy. Now, um, in order to unlock the other 4 zones, you basically have to clear a particular zone with a said character. So if you clear zone 1 with the character, you unlock zone 2. And then if you clear zone 2 with the character, you unlock zone 3. You clear zone 3 with the character, you unlock zone 4. You also have the option of playing all zones mode. So if you play all zones mode, you go through zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and then zone 4
Okay.
continuously. If you die, you start all over from the beginning. There's no save. Okay. Now, In each particular zone, it's comprised of 3 randomly generated levels, and the 4th level is a boss fight, which is also going to
Okay.
be random. Now, there are 4 possible bosses. There's Death Metal, there is Coral Riff, there's King Konga, and there is Deep Blues. Although those are the generic bosses. For the storyline bosses, you have the likes of Dead Ringer, you have the Necrodancer himself, and then you have the Golden Loot. So I'm going to talk about this
Okay.
in a while. Okay, so I mentioned all zones mode. You basically have to clear all 4 zones.
Okay.
Okay, and each particular zone has a different theme. So zone 1 has a cave-like theme. Zone 2 has like a forest theme. Zone 3 is basically like an ice cave hot with some fire caves hybrid. And zone 4 is basically the heart of the crypt. It consists of very narrow rooms. And in each
Okay.
particular zones, you have different enemies who behave differently. They follow a particular pattern, a particular attack pattern, and in order for you to kill them, it will require a certain movement on your end. And sometimes they have different hearts as well. They can deal different damage. They can also react differently depending on which equipment you have. They're able to pull you forward, push you backward, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Or they can, just one shot you. So enemies are like dragons, minotaurs, um, ghosts, goblins, and the likes. Your typical rogue crawling dungeon. Now, in order to get the platinum trophy, basically you have to beat the game with all 9 characters. So all zones mode individually with all 9 characters. Okay, so I'm going to go through all 9 characters one by one.
Sige, sige.
Okay, sige. So the base character, the storyline character, the main character is Cadence. So Cadence is the game's vanilla character. So she acts as the main character, and you start off with her. You play the tutorial with her. And at the end, basically, she faces 2 end game bosses. So
Okay.
after Zone 4, she faces Dead Ringer. And she faces the Necrodancer as her final boss. Except in her final boss, you have to control 2 characters at the same time. So you basically have to move, and then you have to control the both of them at the same time. Okay, so that is Cadence. Now, Bard is the easiest character. Bard doesn't move in rhythm. Basically, he simulates as the true dungeon crawler mechanic of the game. So enemies only move when you move. However, it's possible that he moves automatically if you accidentally step on ice and end up slipping. Okay, so Bard is normally, along with Cadence, the first character that people tend to clear.
Mhm.
Okay, and then the next country, sorry,
Okay lang.
the next character is Dorian. So Dorian
Okay.
is considered as the tank and the highest damage dealer because he starts off with the best equipment. And the thing about Dorian is he jumps every 2 tiles. So instead of moving 1 tile at a time, he moves 2 tiles at a time.
So, bawat characters may iba't ibang mechanic?
Yes.
Tsaka, wow.
Yes. So si Dorian naman, he moves 1 tile at a time. You can choose to deactivate his boots that allow you to move just 1 tile.
Mhm.
But doing so will cause you to take damage for every movement you make. That is called Dorian's Curse. He has the Boots of Leaping Curse. So yeah, so we have 3 characters. Now the 4th character is Melody, who is the mother of Cadence. Dorian's
Okay.
actually the father of Cadence, and Melody is the mother of Cadence. So she is actually considered as one of the easier characters. She moves with the Golden Loot,
Ano
which
ibig
is
sabihin nun?
she attacks with the Golden Loot, which is the item that which is a central item in the game of Crypt of the Necrodancer. Basically, what the Golden Loot does is, unlike each weapon where you have to move adjacent to an enemy before you can attack them, the Golden Loot basically attacks all enemies surrounding you the moment you move to a particular tile.
Gets.
So that makes Melody a lot easier than Cadence, but the thing is, Melody starts off with lower health, and her final boss, which is the Necrodancer 2 fight, is actually a very hectic boss fight. It's hard to describe it, but there's just so many things happening, and there's a very tight time limit, where if you don't beat the Necrodancer in a particular time limit, the walls will close on you, and you will suffer a game over. Okay, so that's a 4th character. Now the 5th character is Eli. So Eli is a unique character because he cannot use any weapons, but he has an infinite number of bombs. that he can plant and kick to enemies. So all other characters, they start off with one bomb, but they're able to collect other bombs in their journey, and when they use a bomb, they lay it down, and they, as much as possible, have to get away from it if they don't have anything that protects them from a bomb explosion. But
Okay.
Eli, on the other hand, once he sets a bomb, he can kick it towards enemies who are around 3 tiles away from him. So that is his main point of attack.
Namamind blown ako, Art, no? So,
Yes.
literal na ibig sabihin, lahat ng character, kailangan mong masterin.
Yes, as much as possible.
Wow.
I'm not yet done because it gets even more exciting. Okay? So that is Eli. So I mentioned the 5 characters. So we start off with Bard, Cadence, Dorian, Melody, and Eli. Okay, so by contrast, these 5 characters are considered as the easier characters. The next 4 characters I'm going to describe are considered as the big 4, and they are considered as the harder characters.
Okay.
So the first character is Dove of the big 4. So Dove cannot attack. She cannot attack. But the exit is automatically unlocked. So she has to run to the exit as quickly as she can.
Okay.
Alright? And although she has the Ring of Peace, it's still possible that she can get swarmed and killed by enemies. So that is Dove. She cannot attack and she cannot kill enemies. She can, however, confuse enemies with a flower and cause them to go the opposite way of where they're supposed to be going, but it doesn't really help much, especially if you are swarmed by a lot of enemies, because you can only confuse one enemy at a time.
Tsaka nabanggit mo rin na random to, di ba? Hindi
Yes.
pwedeng kabisaduhin mo lang yung
Yes.
route mo papunta dun sa exit.
Yes, so you have to be able to react accordingly and improvise given the situation. Yes, so that's Dove. Now the second the second of the big 4 and the 7th overall character is Monk. He is considered as the player that most Necrodancer players really hate
Okay.
to play as, because for the fact that Monk has a very low health pool, 2 hearts, so he can die in one hit almost all the time, and he dies instantly when he picks up gold because he has taken a vow of poverty. So enemies, when you kill enemies, they leave gold. If you pick up gold, you will die. But the thing about Monk is shopkeepers provide him 1 item for free. So every floor there's a shopkeeper, you can pick up an item for free. But if you step on gold, you die. And this is the horrible thing about it. All enemies, they drop gold. Even enemies that are not supposed to drop gold, they will drop gold in Monk.
Okay, so
Okay.
binivisualize ko, no? Hindi
Yes.
kasi masyadong familiar dun sa game. So, pag may namatay na character, na monster, dun sa tile niya, dun nahuhulog yung gold.
Yes, definitely.
So, hindi mo pwedeng stepan yun or apakan yung
You're not allowed to
tile na yun.
step on it. Yes.
Okay.
Now, sometimes, there are enemies that can push you towards gold. Or
Okay.
likewise, there are enemies who have a wind spell who can blow you towards gold. So you have to be very careful for that. And likewise, sometimes you might kill enemies around you. You might be surrounded with gold. You've got nowhere to go. You're stuck.
GG
Now,
na yan.
if that happens, however, Monk can dig his way through walls. Okay? Pero all characters can. Pero the thing about Monk is he starts with a blood shovel. So if you dig an upgraded wall with a blood shovel, Monk will take damage. So he's considered as the worst character to start with. So as much as possible, players who play as Monk, or basically when I play as Monk, I try to get rid of the blood shovel. I try to get it with a different kind of shovel as much as possible. Or I try to get it with an upgraded shovel, so, I don't have to worry about losing health whenever I dig. Okay? So, 7 characters na. We're down to 2.
Okay.
The 8th character is Bolt. So, Bolt basically moves at twice the speed. So, tempo
Okay,
is
so-
twice as fast.
Okay, gets.
Tempo is twice as fast. So, the death metal boss fight is 175 beats per minute. Under Bolt, it is 350 beats per minute. The slowest song, if I'm not mistaken, moves at 240 beats per minute. Or 230 beats per minute under Bolt. Because 115 BPM, I think that's the slowest song. And as Bolt, that is the slowest you have to move, 230 BPM. So just imagine, everything So killing enemies, but you have to do so at twice the speed. Okay?
So, yung reflexes mo, ita-times 2 mo rin.
Yes. And then analyzing, so behaving. But the thing is, si Bolt, she starts with the spear. So unlike other characters, she can kill enemies 2 tiles away from her by default. So that is the nice thing about Bolt. So it gives you some breathing room. And she starts off with 3 health or 3 hearts instead of the normal 2. Okay? And the last character is Arya. She's considered as the hardest normal character, but she's also a storyline character. So in order for you to get the ending of Crypt of the Necrodancer, you have to clear the game with her. Okay, so Arya is actually Cadence's grandmother and Melody's mother as a result. But the thing about Arya is, she starts off with only half a heart. She's stuck with a base dagger, so that means you can't get any better weapons than just a dagger. And you're not allowed to miss a beat. You die if you miss a beat, or you die you make a wrong move. And she dies in 1 hit. So that is Arya. So you're not...
Anong catch ni Arya naman? Kasi pansin ko, correct me if I'm wrong, Art, no? Dun sa mga characters, okay, pahirap ng pera, pero merong something na advantage rin na katulad na bagay ito, merong spear. Ito si Arya, meron ba siyang ganun?
Arya starts off with a potion, so you're allowed to die or make a mistake once.
Okay.
After that, you don't. If you accidentally quaff it, you're not allowed to miss a beat. Unlike the other characters, they can miss beats. They can miss beats, they can run into walls, they can make an illegal move by accident. But Arya, you cannot miss a beat, you cannot make an illegal move. For example, you cannot try to cast a spell that you don't have, you cannot use an item that you don't have, you cannot try to dig a wall that you cannot dig. And basically, she dies in 1 hit all the time. And you die as well if you miss a beat. And Arya, she faces a unique boss, which is the Golden Loot. And the Golden Loot is a difficult boss fight, which can require a lot of practice. So that's basically how Crypt of the Necrodancer works. So you have 9 characters. So I explained all of them, right?
Yes.
So I explained Cadence, Bard, Melody, Dorian, Eli, Dove, Monk, Bolt, and then Arya. So clear all zones mode with each of the characters. Okay? Now, here's the catch. There is another trophy called the Polyamorous Trophy that requires you to clear an all-characters run. What that means is you have to clear the game with all 9 characters in a row. Without dying. If you die, you start all over again from scratch. Yes. So by default, it is best if you... But the good thing is you can choose the order in which you can complete the characters. So, by default, players normally start working on the big 4 first, and then they work on the other 5. So, my order, my preferred order would be Dove first, and then I do Monk, and then afterwards I would do Bolt or Arya. Usually I do Bolt first, then Arya, and then I work my way towards the easier characters. So I do Melody, Cadence, Dorian, Eli, and Bard. So that was basically how my successful all characters run was. Although I've had cases where I cleared 4 characters and I accidentally died on the 5th character. So that is around 2 hours gone. So I had to start all over again.
Tatanong ko nga rin sana kung di ba ganun yung naging order mo, no? Hindi ba mas taxing sa fortitude mo, sa mental fortitude mo na okay, natapos ko na tong mga hard na characters, tapos nung last run ko na madali na lang yung character, dun pa mas mataas yung pressure sa'yo na magkamali?
Well, it has happened. It has happened. I will say it has definitely happened. But for me, it is much better to feel stressed on an easier character than to feel stressed on a harder character.
Sa bagay.
Sa bagay. Kasi for example, you get so stressed with Arya, you miss a beat, you die. You get stressed with Monk, you accidentally step on gold, you die. So, alam mo yun. So that is basically the Polyamorous Trophy. But that's not the end of it.
Hindi pa yun?
Hindi pa.
Oh my
Hindi
God.
pa. Okay? Now, after clearing an all characters run, I mentioned 9 characters, diba? Okay. By then, there will be 2 trophies that should be left for you. Actually, there are more trophies, like you have to beat the game with Cadence in less than 15 minutes. You have to beat the game with Arya without picking up items or using any shrines. So there are still miscellaneous trophies that are very, very difficult. Parang each of those trophies alone are harder than the platinum trophies of Dark Souls and Sekiro
Mm.
combined already, to be honest with you. Okay,
Totoo.
but
I-imagine ko.
clearing an all characters run, if you successfully clear all 9 of them in a row, you will unlock a 10th character.
Oh my God.
And this character alone took me, I'd say, 300 hours to succeed in. And that 10th character is Koda. Okay. Now, si Koda naman, yung gimmick niya is he combines 3 characters into one. He combines Arya, Bolt, and Monk. Meaning,
Okay.
the beat is doubled. He moves twice
Kalahati.
as fast.
Kalahati yung buhay.
He starts off with only half a heart. He has
Okay.
no potion this time. He's stuck with the base dagger. He
Okay.
dies if he misses a beat. He dies if he steps on gold. He dies in one hit.
Grabe, overkill.
And he cannot upgrade his weapon with the base dagger. So just imagine that. All those restrictions. You cannot step on gold. You cannot get a better weapon. You move twice as fast. So just imagine. So technically, you can
Grabe.
complete a Koda run in 10 minutes,
Mm.
but it required me around 300 hours of practice. This is where I basically practiced a lot on the PC. Because the thing about Koda, unlike Arya, actually unlike most, is when you practice against bosses, you're not really allowed to make builds. So what happened in the PC, I was practicing different builds thanks to the Necrodancer community. They made this mod that allowed me to practice builds with Koda. Like I could assign Koda with a particular armor and try to see how I can practice with particular bosses given that mod or given that build. And that was definitely helpful in helping me clear the Koda run. But to be honest with you, I have tried so many runs. If you look at the trophy guides, they will say it'll take you 50 playthroughs. But to be honest with you, it took me way more than 50 playthroughs.
I
It
can
took me
imagine.
It took me over 100 attempts. It took me over 200 attempts. I don't want to know how many attempts it took me to clear Koda, but I can just tell you it took me around 300 hours of practice.
Grabe. May question ako. Di ba yung nabanggit mo kanina yung isang trophy? Hindi kasama dun si Koda. Hindi na siya kasama dun.
No, to be honest with you, if Koda was included in the all characters run, I think that would be as close as to giving up.
Grabe
would
kasi yun
happen.
na-imagine ko talaga.
Oo.
Paano kung kasama pa yun?
If that was included pa, that would be inhumane already, to be honest with you. I mean, maybe I would attempt it, but I would probably reach a breaking point eventually that I might have to step away from it. But maybe I'll still, if Koda was included in it, baka I'd still be attempting it until now. I wouldn't have the platinum trophy in Crypt of the Necrodancer until now. Okay.
Para mabigyan tayo ng konteksto, no, nabanggit mo yung hours na kung paano mo katagal tong nakuha yung platinum. Gamitin natin siya sa span ng months. Gaano katagal mo siya simulan? Meron ka bang mga pahinga, palette cleanser, naglaro ka muna ng ibang games, or talagang pag eto yung target mo na i-platinum, yun lang yung game na nilalaro mo?
Well, I had my palette cleansers as well, of course. I started Crypt mga nung November, but I have been, familiar about. I've heard about the game already. It's just that I really started playing that because some individuals told me that it's the hardest platinum trophy to exist. Actually, after Koda, there is still one more trophy,
Okay.
but I'll talk about it later on. So it was really only on November when I really started playing it, but then it is highly addicting. That's the thing. So despite it being a very difficult platinum trophy, you will not notice the amount of hours that you'll spend on it, to be honest with you, because it's a very good game. It's a very nice game. It incorporates so many things. It has a very, very high replayability value because there are just so many characters. And there are just so many things that you can do. And to be honest with you, even after getting the platinum trophy, or even after getting the 100% on it eventually, I'll still be playing around with it because there's just so many things you can do with it. To the point that I wasn't paying attention on how much hours I've been spending on it. I just realized, oh my gosh, I've spent this much time on this game already.
Gets.
Probably I think there's I probably spent more time in Skyrim, to be honest with you. I don't know how many hours I've spent on Skyrim already, but I don't want to know. Pero yeah, just saying that. The thing about Crypt is the number of hours that you spend it is not something that you feel. It's just something that you'll realize eventually because
Mm.
it's a very addicting game. So
Yes.
it also has a very catchy soundtrack, and there are more options on different soundtracks that are available of different variations. So aside from let's say the Danny Brown, different characters, let's say for Melody, she has different music. Arya has different music as well, and you can set them up to have different music as well. So that's the nice thing about the game. There's just so many things you can do. There's also a way to succeed depending on different builds. So, for example, in this run, you could have a damaging build, and in the next run, you could have magic build. But again, you don't know which build you're going to be getting because everything is randomly generated.
Mm. So,
Mhm.
bagat mo Ark kanina, meron pang isang trophy. Wag naman sana mas mahirap pa tong trophy na to o hindi naman.
Mas mahirap pa siya.
Puta.
And it is the one that gave me the worst time.
Okay,
The
sige.
lo-
Explain mo yung trophy na yun.
it's called the lowest of the low.
Okay.
You have to clear all 9 characters in a row. All characters run without picking up items, without buying items from the shopkeeper, without picking up items from chests, without using shrines. So all
Ano
characters
yung shrine pala? Sorry. Hindi kasi ako
shrines
familiar.
kasi they have different effects. Like if you activate a shrine, it can make the levels bigger. It can turn off the lights, making it harder for enemies to see you, or
Mm.
it can grant you certain items. It
Random
can
din talaga.
random rin siya. Okay. Yon. So you cannot upgrade anything at all. All characters are stuck with the base equipment. Usually, because what happens is as they traverse through the zones, it gets slightly easier and easier because they gain armor, they gain health. So instead of 3 hearts, they can get 6 hearts, 7 hearts, 8 hearts. So they're able to also tank more damage because they have more armor. So enemies that can deal like let's say 2 hearts of damage only deal half a heart of damage, and they can also heal. They can use magic to freeze enemies, something like that. But in lowest of the low, that is not happening. You're stuck with your base equipment. So everyone is a walking one hit kill. One mistake is basically fatal, and some players have experience playing 500 hours, 600 hours.
Mm.
Some have been playing for 2,000 hours and have yet to get this achievement. So I'm not sure if it was luck or persistence, but I can tell you I had a very, very hard time getting it.
Totoo, na-imagine ko nga eh.
Mhm.
Tsaka, ikaw lang yung Pinoy na merong platinum trophy nito, di ba?
Well, at least
Kung tama yung ano ko,
from what
research ko tsaka yung sabi rin ng grupo natin.
yeah, well, from what I've heard, um, but basically, in lowest of the low, again, they normally tell you to do the big four first and then focus on the 5 easier characters. However, I did a different approach.
Okay.
So I started with Dove again, Monk, and then after Dove and Monk, I treated that as stage 1.
Okay.
So in business 9 characters, I treated it as 5 stages. So the gimmick stage, Dove, an RNG dependent character, and Monk.
Okay.
And then the second stage, I chose an easy character. I put Dorian over here.
Parang pahinga. Hindi
Yes,
naman,
pahinga.
okay, gets.
Pahinga siya.
Okay.
Pero I still failed the Dorian run kasi I accidentally picked up a bomb or some items. Kasi he jumps 2 tiles.
Mm.
So there was a run, nagkamali ako. So I ended up picking an item kasi napatalon ako. When that happened, I just froze. And then I looked at the TV, it's like, napaganyan lang ako. Yun. And then the third stage, I do Bolt and Arya over here. Now, I
Okay.
did Bolt first kasi si Bolt, twice yung speed niya.
Mm.
So when I play Arya, mas mabagal siya. Parang half speed na lang.
Mm.
So that gave me more room to actually breathe with Arya.
Okay.
And then yung fourth level, this is where I did Cadence and si Melody. Inuna ko si Melody kasi si Melody has 2 hearts. It's easier to die with her. And Cadence, the danger is normally in zone 3 onwards. And then the fifth character, or the fifth stage, this is yung home run. Si Eli, the guy with infinite bombs, just blow
Okay.
everything up. Although I had to be careful with one of the bosses because one of the bosses was a boss that it was notoriously difficult under him, which is King Konga. But fortunately, I did not get King Konga 4. I just got the easy variant of him. And then the last was Bard. Okay, and Bard is the easiest because he moves. Okay, basically you dictate the tempo. However, namatay ako kay Bard once.
Okay.
Namatay ako kay Bard once. So I cleared 8 characters in a row.
Mm.
Pagdating kay Bard,
Doon ka pa namatay.
doon ako namatay. Yes.
Baka
I'll
ano
be
na
honest.
yan? Sige.
I
Okay,
felt
sige.
devastated. Hindi ako naka-function ng maayos the rest of the day. I'll be honest with you.
Yun yung sinasabi ko kanina, di ba, na parang natapos mo na yung mga may hirap talaga, tapos etong last, doon ka pa na messed up yung run mo.
Yes. I have also failed in Melody. I failed in Melody before. I also failed in Dorian. Pero most of my failures were in the big 4. Particularly, there were days I couldn't even get past Dove and Monk. Nang nangyayari kasi, si Dove, nakiklear ko siya, tapos mamamatay ako kay Monk.
Okay.
Then there would happen naman, Monk, I would clear Monk, and then mamamatay ako kay Dove. So alam mo yun? Di kasi naman, si Monk, he has the worst starting equipment ever. So, 2 hearts and then blood shovel, and basically he dies in 1 hit. Parang, wala lang yung health na yan, he will die in 1 hit. And then sometimes, the thing about Monk is he doesn't have any enemy reduction. He doesn't start with the charm that prevents spirits from spawning. So the thing about Monk is sometimes while you're killing enemies and strategizing where you should kill them so you don't get blocked, you end up, a spirit can spawn, and a spirit spawning can throw you off. That is basically also why I died with Bard. A spirit spawned and medyo na throw off ako.
Anong ulit yung mechanic kay Bard? Sorry, nakalimutan ko.
Si Bard kasi moves on his own beat.
Okay.
Pero the thing with Bard kasi, nung nag-spawn yung spirit, maraming enemies were headed my way. So, medyo nagkamali ako sa movement, and ayun, because of stress, I made the wrong move and I died. So yun. Pero the thing is, sometimes really every situation is survivable, but given the time that you have, sometimes you just don't really have much time or much room for error on how to deviate from it. So that was the strategy that I did for the lowest of the low. But the thing is, I remembered spending so much time with it na I think, I'll admit, okay, nagka-COVID-19 ako.
Okay.
Nagka-COVID-19 ako. I think kasi bumaba yung immune system ko kahit despite the fact that I don't go out because of, dahil nagpupuyat ako for that one. Kaya I learned my lesson from that one. Pero I remember nung after nakuha ko yung trophy na yun, yung lowest of the low, my gosh, ang sakit-sakit ng ulo ko, ang pula ng eyes ko. Tapos yung parang gusto ko matulog na hindi ko kayang matulog. So
may question ako dyan. Yung time na kinuha mo yung trophy na yan, yung lowest of the low, yung tawag dito, prepare mo ba yung sarili mo na, okay, etong araw na to, kukunin ko na tong trophy na to. Hindi pwedeng hindi.
Yes, actually.
Ganun na yung mentality mo nung time na yun.
Actually, to be honest with you, the moment I started Crypt of the Necrodancer, that was the very first trophy I encircled, yung lowest of the low. That was the first thing I encircled. So, I actually started practicing when I went for the Cadence Deathless run and when I went for Arya low. Ang ginagawa ko, normally, I try to clear zones without picking up items and at the same time without picking up gold. So I try to make it a point, especially for the characters who don't pick up gold. Kung kaya kong tapusin yung level na yon with 0 gold, I try.
Okay.
At saka I also do that, okay, kasi I don't pick up gold para hindi ako masanay masyado mag-pick up ng gold because of Monk.
Yung mechanic sa kanya, diba?
Yeah, yung if he picks up gold, he dies automatically. Although every now and then, when I was still in that learning curve,
siguro kasi ito yung fascinating sa akin, no, bilang hindi naman ako ganyan kagaling na gamer, no. I don't think kaya kong gawin 'yan. ang fascinating kasi sa akin sa kinukwento mo, kasi hindi ko pa rin naman talaga siya nalaro, is mastering these characters tapos adjusting yourself na hindi ka magkaroon ng mannerism or yung tawag dito, yung muscle memory mo dito sa certain character na to. Kasi sa ini-imagine ko sa kinukwento mo, kunwari, eto, na-master mo na tong isang character ito, yung mechanics sa kanya, yung proseso para hindi i-apply yung mechanic na yun dito sa isang character na to. para sa akin kasi parang yun, isa yun sa pinakamahirap din. Lalo na as a gamer, di ba, nakaka-develop tayo ng muscle memory. Kunwari sa Sekiro, galing ka ng Bloodborne, papunta ng
Yeah,
Sekiro.
definitely.
Magkaiba yung approach mo dapat doon. Talagang mag-a-adjust ka pa.
Mm-mm.
So, dito sa game na to, paano yun? Or parang talagang practice lang din talaga?
Practice lang talaga. You have no idea how many times nakita ko yung you died killed by vow of poverty. It happened so many times, especially with Monk. Pero yun nga, it was really more of the mindset na I will get lowest of the low eventually, or I will clear Coda eventually. I just don't know when, but it's a 100% chance that I will get it in the future. So parang I think that mindset that I embrace from my rhythm gaming, yung I don't know when I will get the perfect score for this song. I don't know when I'll get an excellent, but I'm sure 100% in the future, my chances of getting the perfect score is 100%. So I think that mindset continued to drive the determination to at least go for that particular achievement. I mean, to be honest with you, however, there were some times when I thought that it was impossible, or who the hell put this achievement in the game? What were they thinking? But eventually I found out, hey, I think I have managed to clear every character at least once with no items. I managed to do that. So it's just a matter of trying to do all of them consecutively. So yun.
Yes.
So because basically my thought process is obviously when we take a look at some achievements like that are very difficult, it's like playing in the piano. You don't get to very difficult etudes or concertos automatically overnight. You do it one step at a time. So with regards to Crypt of the Necrodancer, so we start off with the easy characters. Okay, then start playing them with items. And then once you get a grip of how they work, so try to see if you can do it with no items, no picking up gold. Do it one zone at a time. So zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. I think because there are many who are a little excited about clearing it immediately, that they decide to go all zones immediately. But I said, why don't I try doing it little by little, so one zone at a time, and try clearing the big four first. But I figured the big four, it might be too mentally taxing. So why not try putting an easy character in between the both of them, in between the big four, so at least there's some mental rest kahit papaano. So those are some things that when I'm trying to look at in a game, I try to see if I can outsmart the system. So that is the joy as well in trophy hunting. If you're able to outsmart a challenge that is provided to you, it just goes to show that you can overcome difficulties that you have, as long as the determination is in you and the passion to overcome it is there.
Gets. Tsaka yung nabanggit mo rin na yung determination, yung I think isang malaking factor rin sa maliban sa syempre number one skill, 'di ba? Yung patience din, kasi susugal ako or pupusta ako na hindi karamihan yung mga gamers na may mahabang pasensya katulad mo para i-conquer yung challenge na yan. Kasi I think kadalasan ng gamer nag-rage quit kasi unang-una, syempre iba-iba tayo ng PC, 'di ba? Iba-iba tayo ng ceiling ng patience natin. Kunwari, matanda na ako or daddy gamer na ako, meron na akong responsibilities o iba, no? Meron lang akong set na eto lang yung kaya kong gawin. Pag di ko na kaya, hindi na ako mag-spend ng time para dito. Move on na ako sa iba.
Definitely.
And yung sa akin kasi, ayokong parang iset yung idea or notion sa'yo na, okay, ang dami mong time. Kasi usually, ganun yung laging discussion pag nagpo-post ng Platinum Trophy, ilang hours mo tinapos yan. Tapos, meron laging negative connotation na, may buhay pa ba to? Ngayon, gusto kong i-transition to para lang meron tayong balance, no? Gusto kong i-share mo naman, Art, ano ba yung ginagawa mo? I mean, you do for a living, ano yung profession mo? Para meron tayong balance na, okay, hindi si Art yung kumbaga yung parang yung mga notion na binibigay ng mga ibang gamers na, ba't ganyan? May time pa ba yan? May social life pa ba yan? May buhay pa ba yan outside these games? So, gusto ko ng balance. Share mo naman, Art. Share mo naman, Art. Ano ba yung ginagawa mo?
So right now, I am an assistant professorial lecturer sa LaSalle. Okay, so I'm a Google and Microsoft certified educator. I think pwede mong makikita mo yung Microsoft certified educator over here. And C++ associate programmer of the C++ Institute. Okay, so yeah, there's that. And I am also working on my dissertation, PhD, in computer science. And I do a lot of research about health informatics, artificial intelligence. Okay, actually, recently nga, I don't wanna gloat about this one, pero a team that I joined in a hackathon, we recently were recognized as global winners. So there's that. I'm sure nakita mo,
sa post mo,
diba? Yeah.
Tapos nagbasa rin ako doon, art konti. Pero correct me if I'm wrong. Tungkol din to sa mental health, 'di ba? Kasi parang yung in COVID something.
Yeah. That was last year nung global
Ayun
finalist
last year.
ako.
Okay.
Global finalist. So I worked on an application that dealt with dealing with social isolation. So we came up with the application called Snail Space. It's actually in the R&D development right now, so research and development with regards to sentiment analysis. Kasi ako ang ginagawa ko yung chatbot naman. So right now, I am working on the chatbot that is able to distinguish positive and negative sentiments about their situation. Para kahit post-COVID-19, yung Snail Space can still act as an application that can act as a safe space for individuals.
Para sa akin no, na kunwari na wala naman din idea sa ganyan, or let's say ibang listeners natin, can you explain kung ano yung ginagawa ng application na yan?
Okay, sige.
In layman's terms siguro, para mas madali natin maintindihan.
Okay, sige. So yung application yung last year I'm talking about is yung Snail Space. It is basically an application that acts as a safe space. So there are modules there that enable you to perform mentally enriching activities. Tapos there are also built-in emergency hotlines that can dial emergency hotlines, okay, depending on your GPS location, okay? And there is also a module that can aid you in panic attacks via breathing exercises or cognitive exercises. So if you're going through a mental health emergency, there are modules that can help you handle that. And that was a global finalist in last year's NASA Space Apps COVID-19 Challenge Hackathon.
Ang galing nung sorry, yung nabanggit mo yung parang yung parang merong something siyang gagawin pag nakakaramdam ng anxiety attack.
So
lalo
yeah,
pag in-incorporate siya, let's say sa iWatch ba yun o Apple Watch, kasi madedetect yung beat ng puso mo or something, parang ganyan.
And it can be activated by a simple haptic gesture kasi syempre if you're having a panic attack, mahirap naman mag-navigate towards the app and then towards the module. So parang a simple haptic gesture lang signifies na you're having a panic attack. So yun. So via we're using machine learning to determine the different acts of kunyari tuwing nagpa-panic attack ang isang individual, parang what would be the best way to what would be the best gesture to determine.
Etong Snail Space, iba pa to dun sa nanalong ngayon?
Hindi. Yung nanalo recently, yung sa EO dashboard, that is basically visualizing yung mobility and yung correlation niya with air quality. So parang it can also help policymakers identify risks, okay, of certain areas with regards to the mobility and the corresponding air quality. Kasi air quality is a research that is heavily done in environmental sustainability and human life science, and as much as possible, improving the prognosis of the living conditions of humans. So what we did was we looked for a correlation using satellite data that is provided and build the visualization that there is indeed the correlation between mobility during lockdowns, okay, and the corresponding air quality. So, yun siya.
Okay.
So, ayun, medyo nosebleed, I know.
So, okay. Yung ba yung sinasabi na parang, okay, hindi ko alam kung related to, eksaktong related Nung umpisa ng lockdown kasi, so let's say March, siguro yon March, April, May, ganyan. Sobrang saya ko in a sense na kasi, okay, pwede palang dalhin yung trabaho ko sa bahay at hindi ko na kailangang maka-experience ng traffic sa Manila. Tapos, less expenses din kasi kaya ko na lang magluto imbes na kumain sa labas. Pero after nung 3 months na yon, doon ako naka-experience nung parang ano tawag dito yung mga sakit sa pagsiman ka? Kalimutan ko yung term, yung
seasick? Yes, motion sick.
Hindi, yung parang
social isolation?
Sorry, I forgot the term. Yung parang cabin fever. Yun.
Cabin fever, okay.
Cabin fever. Kasi hindi ako lumalabas ng bahay. Nasa kwarto lang ako. Eventually, sabi ko, ito ba yung cabin fever? Tapos parang I'm longing for fresh air. Kailangan ko din talagang lumabas. Kasi hindi ito yung normal setup talaga. Kumbaga parang iniba yung style ng pagtatrabaho. So yung sinasabi mo ba na na kanina na mobility, kasama ba yun doon? Or tapos yung air or something, or iba, or totally different yung in-explain mo kanina?
It's more on being able to pinpoint, let's say, kasi mobility, that's where like say vehicles or any other kasi there are different factors rin, like yung Taal volcano eruption, but it can pinpoint locations that can have the potential to have hazardous air quality that can promote things like tuberculosis or other respiratory illnesses in places na once nag-open up again, na yun ang magiging air quality nila doon. So parang adjustments that can be made. So parang planting of more trees, making more filtration systems as much as possible. So parang that is one of the applications in the long run that can act as a framework for.
Okay, layo pala ng sinabi ko.
Hindi, okay lang yun. Okay. You probably noticed rin na parang mas gumanda yung air quality during the COVID lockdown.
Yun nga.
Yun, parang that was the visualization that proved that. Parang ganon.
Gets. So, guys, kung nakikinig kayo, kung napansin nyo, ito yung sinet ko na transition kay Art kasi gusto ko ring enlighten yung ibang tao na hindi porke gamer lagi tayo may notion na tambay to or ito lang yung buhay na ito. So, si Art yung best example na kahit ang dami niyang mga platinum din, na-explain niya kung gaano katagal niya nila itong Crypt of the Necrodancer, is yung mga accomplishment niya labas dito sa gaming life niya. So, I think best example ka doon, Art. And
you can check out my LinkedIn as well for my publications if you're interested in reading them. I've done publications actually yung dissertation ko is about games right now. It's about determining difficulty in rhythm games via deriving the attributes. Kasi normally, this is a machine learning thing. Pero ito, i-distinguish niya ano yung magandang attributes.
Okay.
Para ma-determine yung optimal level ng difficulty.
Ang ganda nito, Art, kasi ito medyo mahaba na yung episode natin pero gusto kong i-transition to sa question na nabanggit ko rin sa'yo before nung magka-chat tayo tungkol sa difficulty in video games kasi I think last year naging discussion to sa Sekiro na lalagyan ng easy mode. Ano yung stand mo doon? Ano yung take mo doon sa kasi I think may pinanggagalingan yung side na lagyan ng easy mode or quote-unquote easy mode ba siya or accessibility para dun sa mga differently abled gamers para ma-experience itong game na to. Tapos yung kabila naman side, I think, ang dinidebate is bakit nyo ilalagay sa Sekiro yan or sa mga Soulsborne game, yan talaga yung goal niyan is to be hard. And ikaw, ano yung take mo doon? Ano yung opinion mo doon?
Well, if you ask me, for any game, if the developers decide to put an easy mode, they have nothing to lose. They just have things to gain, at least in a monetary sense, because that means maybe there'll be some players who have been turned off by the difficulty. They can check out the game and therefore possibly expand the community. Never mind muna yung gatekeeping thoughts. Okay, let's keep an open mind. So parang you will open the game to more individuals who may not have a faster eye-hand reaction than you. And be able to connect to more individuals with the same experience. One of the games I think that does a good job, that is Skyrim, because Skyrim you can choose any difficulty, but no matter what the difficulty is or whatever player decides to play it in, they still experience Skyrim as a whole. They're able to explore the lore. They're able to perform quests in the Dark Brotherhood, in the Thieves Guild, or participate in the Civil War, argue between the Stormcloaks, argue between for the Empire. Okay. So despite the difficulty, there's actually no divide between the gamers. So you actually expand the community with that one. So if you ask me, is adding an easy mode a bad thing? I'd say an easy mode is not really an accessibility option. For me, accessibility option is something different.
Mm.
Okay. The perfect example of accessibility options would be what Naughty Dog did in The Last of Us
Yes.
2. To be
Totoo.
honest with you, because they're actually, it aids a disabled individual who is um, hard in hearing, or as well as those individuals with an impaired vision.
Mm.
And likewise, individuals with such disabilities, they are still able to platinum the game technically. So that's an accessibility option for me. For me, an easy mode isn't really accessibility option. It's more on a difficulty setting on the challenges that await the players. So
Mm.
if game developers decide to add easy modes to their games, I
Mm.
see no harm in it, because to be honest with you, Celeste also has that.
Ah.
Although I had an option to play it in assist mode, I decided not to play it in with assist mode, so to make the experience more enjoyable. Now, with regards to Soulsborne having no easy mode, um, I believe the game developer, si Hidetaka Miyazaki, already put
Yes.
an emphasis that the reason why there is no easy mode is they want all players to have the exact same experience.
Mm.
So they want players to have the exact same struggles, to relate with each other with the exact same struggles, and experience the same rewards. So the thing is, to be honest with you, I think it's okay if Dark Souls or Sekiro does not have an easy mode, because they are difficult. But the nice thing is they aren't unfair, because they're actually fair, and you can actually devise different strategies on how the bosses can be defeated. But should Dark Souls actually have an easy mode? If you ask me, I think it's okay if it
Okay.
doesn't have an easy mode. But if the developers decide to add an easy mode, I don't think they have anything to lose from doing so. So there is nothing wrong again if they decide on doing so, because if they do, they open the game up maybe to more individuals to be able to understand the lore, or to enjoy um the aesthetics that the game has to offer. Although it might upset the veterans, okay,
Yes.
if there's an easy mode added, like
Mm.
why do they get this trophy when we had to struggle for it? Pero
Mm.
again, you can't really please everyone. There will always be sides to both sides of the coin. So if you ask me, I think both sides each have an equally valid reason. But again, my stance is, if the game developer decides to add an easy mode, there is nothing for them to lose, and I see nothing wrong with that. Okay. But as a player of the Soulsborne game, I think it's okay as it stands that they do not have an easy mode, because they play in tandem with what um the developer aims to have, or aims to induce in terms of player experience. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a co-op mode, so it's meant to be very difficult for some players. So some players will turn to co-op mode so
Mm.
that they can clear that, so it can actually promote teamwork. So maybe there's no easy mode, but the game developers left that option to give those who are struggling with the game an opportunity to, struggle with the game alongside with someone else and clear that. I don't know, but that is basically my interpretation of it.
Gets.
Mm-mm.
Actually nag-agree ako sa no, kung magde-decide man yung tawag dito, FromSoft, na
Mm-mm.
ganun yung gawin nila, na lagyan ng easy mode o ano. I guess okay lang din sa akin, pero sa kabilang banda nga meron din parang may something na mawawala sa series, kasi for me personally, yung games na to, sana wag niyo isipin na gatekeeper ako, no. Ito lang talaga
Mm-mm.
yung tingin ko sa akin, personally, no. Collective experience talaga yung games na to. Kumbaga parang nako-compare ko siya sa, kunwari, ano bang perfect analogy dito? Dalawa siguro. Okay, yung una, nung nag-lockdown tayo, parang sobrang okay, pwede na tayo manood ng Netflix sa bahay, sobrang accessible lang, 'di ba?
Mm-hmm.
Pero for some reason, hindi niya kayang i-emulate or yung feeling pag nanood ka sa movie theaters. Yung feeling na meron kang kasabay tumawa, magulat, na stranger, ibang-iba siya kumpara pag nanood ka sa Netflix. Oo, sige, sa bahay nakakanood ka ng movie, accessible kasama yung buong pamilya mo. Ibang-iba pa rin pag pumunta ka sa movie theater, pipila ka, tapos pare-pareho kayo ng magiging experience dun sa papanoorin nyo.
Definitely.
Isa yun. Tapos yung isa pa na pwedeng analogy ko sa tingin ko is parang okay lang naman kung mali, correct mo rin ako, Art, no? Isang analogy ko sa Soulsborne is parang let's say Enchanted Kingdom or Star City. Yan. Merong mga rides yan, iba't iba. Merong roller coaster. I think para sa akin personally yun yung takot na takot ako. So, intention nung ride na yon na maging nakakatakot or yun nga, kung ano mang intention nung ride na yon. Kung hindi yun yung para sa'yo, meron kang ibang rides na pwedeng sakyan. I think ganun din yung games. Itong Soulsborne na to, ito yung roller coaster. Kung hindi para sa'yo yan, merong ibang games para sa'yo na pwede mong laruin.
Definitely. Because remember, at the end of the day, games are there for us to have fun. If it is something that stresses you out, then it is not for you.
Kasi kaya ko naisip yung analogy na roller coaster kasi hindi ko i-demand sa roller coaster na magkaroon ng easy mode.
Oo, na syempre na bagalan mo please para masakyan ko.
Oo. Ang gagawin ko, sasakay ako ng siguro ng Ferris wheel or ng ibang ride na mabagal.
Ako naman takot sa height, so hindi ko naman pwede sabihin, "Hi, pwede niyong pababaan yung Ferris wheel para hindi masyado mataas." Hindi, di ba? So, yeah, there's also that again. Pero yun, at the bottom line is, yun, in terms of games, kasi games are supposed to enrich you with a memorable experience and it should be there for our enjoyment. If it is not, if you feel like you're suffering from a game or you're not enjoying it, then maybe that type of game is not for you. There could be other games, that may not be Soulsborne, okay, but you can receive the same amount of satisfaction that you can get from clearing the said game na hindi Soulsborne. So there's that. And maybe, if you feel more confident with your abilities, yung eye-hand reaction mo, maybe you could try simple hack and slash games muna. Okay, like, Kingdom Hearts 2. Kingdom Hearts 2 is very, very forgiving. Okay. Actually, I think the Kingdom Hearts series would be a good introduction to the Sekiro series. Okay, so there's that. Sekiro series. Actually, isa lang mag-isa.
yung Kingdom Hearts, nahirapan din naman ako dun sa proud, nun.
Oh, definitely. Diba? Pero yun nga, yun ang may difficulty.
Yun may difficulty.
Yun ang may difficulty mode. So, there's that. So, I think part of the charm of the game that FromSoft wishes to entrust in the Soulsborne games is that one. So, I think if you ask me, they're doing a pretty good job at it. And not putting an easy mode is their decision. And I see, again, nothing wrong with that because as the game stands as it is, okay, maganda talaga siya. And despite having no easy mode, it is still an enjoyable game. Getting killed, the thing about Souls, if you continuously die, it means there's something wrong with your strategy. Again, yun sa sinabi ko. But if you're now starting to get stressed over dying over and over again, then maybe you're approaching the game with a different mindset. It's no longer there to give you the enjoyment that you deserve, but it's now frustrating you. Parang ganon. But if you get the satisfaction out of knowing that if you die, but then you eventually will succeed, and the moment you succeed, so there's that. So once you feel the reward of succeeding, and you feed off of that positive energy, then that is nice. But if it gets to the point where it stresses you out, it affects your mental health, then you might want to consider checking out other games that are better for your mental health.
Very well said, Art. Yun,
definitely.
So, ang haba na ng episode natin, tatapusin ko na to. Pero bago ko tapusin yung episode natin, meron akong segment dito sa show na lagi kong, I think nasa show notes din. Hindi ko na-check kung nakapag-prepare ka, no? Ito yung tinatawag ka na off-topic recommendation. So, sa segment na to, dito ako tsaka yung mga guests nagre-recommend ng anything na hindi related sa video games. Music, artist, services, food, restaurants, anything. So, parang palate cleanser lang to para sa mahabang discussion natin. So, sinong gusto mo mauna? Ako ba o gusto mo ikaw?
Ikaw na lang muna.
Okay. Meron akong pinapanood ngayon na series sa Netflix. So, Japanese siya na drama. I'm not sure kung familiar kayo. Hindi ko rin siya nakikita sa newsfeed ko. So, I think hindi siya ganun kasikat. Lately kasi meron akong craving sa slice of life na genre. Meron akong pinapanood ngayon. Ang title niya is Kotaro Lives Alone. I think ano siya, galing siya sa isang manga tapos naging parang Netflix drama siya na live action or something. So, ang maganda kasi dito, for me personally, lalo na pag may craving kayo sa, ganito lang, yung parang hindi naman, parang hindi heavy, pero meron din mga kurot sa puso. Ito, I highly recommend Kotaro Lives Alone. Ang story niya is isang bata na biglang nangupahan sa isang kwarto, sa isang compound. As in, literal na mag-isa lang siya. Wala siyang kasama. I think 5 years old or 4 years old, ganyan. Tapos, katabi niyang kwarto, katabi ng unit niya is isang aspiring or isang mangaka. So, gumagawa ng manga pero hindi pa sikat or wala pang nagagawang manga na talagang nag-boom. And ang ganda lang kasi para sa akin, ang ganda lang nung mga characters dito in a sense na parang buong community or buong compound naging parang guardian ni Kotaro. Pero sa kabaliktaran, si Kotaro pa yung parang nagtuturo dito sa mga adults na to ng lesson. So, sobrang ang sarap lang panoorin. Ang warm, hindi siya ganun ka-heavy nga gaya na nabanggit ko, pero may mga kukot sa puso. Though, meron lang akong isang part dito sa Kotaro, or hindi ko sure kung ganito talaga yung mindset sa Japan, which is yung parang patriarchal talaga na kasi, spoiler territory na pala. Hindi ko na lang sasabihin. Sorry. So,
okay.
Basta yun. Kung gusto niyo yung gantong genre, try nyo panoorin at least kahit 2 episode. Pag hindi nag-click sa inyo after watching 2 episodes, maiksi lang naman, I think mga 25 minutes lang. Kung hindi nag-click sa inyo after watching 2 episodes, huwag nyo na ituloy. Pero, I highly recommend this series. So, Kotaro Lives Alone, available sa Netflix. So, yun yung off-topic recommendation ko for this episode. Ikaw, Art.
Off topic, I think some of you guys are already familiar with this one. But if there's an anime that you guys should check out, oh my gosh, I sound like a weeb for this one.
Okay lang, ako din naman.
You guys should check out, how do I say this? You guys should check out Himouto Umaru-chan.
Ano yun?
Oh wow, hindi mo alam.
Di ba yung English name, siguro? Di ako masyadong...
Himouto Umaru-chan, basically, she is someone who acts like the perfect individual outside her home in school. But when she gets home, she is this gamer who is a big burden to her brother, spoiled brat. So, ayan. You should check out that game.
Meron siya sa Netflix?
Yeah.
Sige, tatry ko. Ano yung parang slice of life din, yung genre niya?
I wouldn't say slice of Japan life, pero more on like a parody on Japanese life with a sister who is very, very, how do I explain this one? Who's a spoiled brat with a different persona outside.
Okay, sige. Ano ulit yung title?
Himouto Umaru-chan.
Himouto Umaru-chan. Sige,
Umaru.
sige.
Umaru.
Sige. Lalagay ko yun sa ko. Sa mga papanoorin ko. So, yun guys, yun yung off-topic recommendation namin. Kotaro Lives Alone, tsaka yung, nakalimutan ko ulit. I-search ko na lang. Tsaka ilalagay ko yung description sa episode para mas madali yung matandaan. So, yun. Sobrang haba ng episode natin, Art. Pasensya ka na. I think na parang nalagay ko lang sa show notes sa atin mga 1 hour. Umabot tayo ng mahigit 2 hours. So, tatapusin ko na yung episode. And bago yun, baka may gusto kong i-promote, i-shoutout, anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out to Mark and Norvin for suggesting that I show up in the Games Log. And I just wanted to thank you as well for the invite. It's an honor. And I had so much fun, talking about this one. So,
Salamat. Actually, marami pa akong tanong, pero siguro baka pwede ulit kitang ma-invite sa susunod na episode.
No problem.
Kasi meron kaming napag-usapan kanina ni Art tungkol dun sa AI ng The Last Guardian. Hindi ko na siya nasama dito sa discussion namin kasi mahaba na, baka humaba pa kami ng tuluyan. So, I think isang magandang topic din yun tungkol sa mga AI ng mga games. And yun, sana pwede ka pa ulit mag-guest.
Sure, no problem.
Ayun, okay.
I'd be glad.
Wala nang bawian to. So, yun guys, maraming salamat sa pakikinig, sa panonood. Kung mabot ka hanggang dito, 2 hours plus. And yun, hanggang sa susunod na episode ulit. Bye!
By the way, Jhaz, before you end, I just wanted to wish you the best in Hollow Knight. Mapa-platinum mo rin yan eventually.
Sana. Actually, dalawa Art, yung dream platinum ko is yung Hollow Knight tsaka Final Fantasy 9. Kasi yung jumping rope, something
Oh
doon,
my.
hindi ko rin kaya. So,
Good
yun.
luck.
yung nakita ko na platinum mo rin yung, sorry, daldal ulit ako. Nakita ko na platinum mo na rin yung, yung FF10. Actually, kasama din siya sa lineup ko, pero kasi nagawa ko na siya dati sa PS3, pero hindi ko na na-recover yung original ko na PSN ID, so bago to. And isa rin yun sa mga upcoming projects ko. Gusto ko talaga siyang i-platinum. And gusto kong itanong yun, yung AI nun, kasi yung controls dun sa Chocobo Racing. So, pag inaalala ko, frustrating siya. Pero
I just have one thing. Just keep trying and I wish you the best.
sige.
Yun lang.
Pero question dun sa Chocobo Racing. Okay, last na talaga. May kasamang RNG talaga siya, di ba?
Yeah.
Yung placement ng mga balloons tsaka yung labas ng mga ibon, RNG rin talaga siya, di ba?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, medyo matagal na rin since I played FF10. Nung PS3 pa yun. Pero yun, I wish you the best.
Sige, salamat.
Okay,
So
good
yun,
luck.
Maraming salamat again, Art. And guys, sa pakikinig, sa panonood. Bye!
Bye!